and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine.
This is going to be repetitive. And if anybody just watched me on Alex Jones, but we're doing it here too, because we're putting this on blast. And I gotta be careful about the metaphors that I use. If I say that this is going to be the death knell of legacy media, is someone going to take that out of context and say that I threaten death against MSM? This should be the death knell of a dozen Twitter accounts. MSM, we're going to go through it. We're going to go through it. I want to start it from the beginning because this is the clip presented by, who is this? I don't know who this person is. Aiken, AC1. Oh, I'm an idiot. I did know that. Midas Touch. That explains everything. Well, now I feel much less guilty about destroying this account in the way that it rightly deserves. 17 seconds, people. 17 seconds. You know you're getting lied to. But what's even more insidious is that the first time I heard this, I thought he said gun and not cars at the beginning, right here.
And you're not going to be able to sell those cars.
You're not going to be able to sell those guns. I thought that he said guns, which is why I thought this was even more bizarre when I first heard it. But I'm going to play it one last time.
And you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell
That'll
those
be the
cars.
least of
They're
it.
building massive factories.
And then back to a story about cars. Everybody, if you don't know when you're getting lied to yet, it's going to be very difficult to make you understand that, or you're new to the game, and in which case we can help you. That was the 17-second clip that went viral. It went around the world, as they say, before the truth had time to put its pants on. I'm about to go fishing. I just want to fish for an hour on a Saturday afternoon. I hear this clip and I'm like, ugh, that sounds bad. But I know that the people who are saying that this clip is what it says have lied to me systematically in the past. So I say, I'm going to go, as I walk to my favorite pond, I'm going to go find the video and play that and see if it's in context and see if it makes sense. I go find the Ohio rally because you'll see here, some people might not have even known there was a rally going on. It was a rally in Ohio. It's live at the time. I go and, oh, okay, fine. He's wearing this hat. These are the people behind him. Okay. I start from the beginning, skip until I get to a context where I know that we're going to hear what he said here. I get to the context and I'm like, no matter how cynical you get, it's hard to keep up. I know that they lie to us. I didn't know that they would be so reckless, so malicious in the lie. I got the context of the clip. You've all seen this by now if you follow me on Twitter, because I was a little heavy on it yesterday because I was fed up. This is the longer clip, the context. Some might even say to make it make sense.
China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal.
He's friends with
those
Chinese
big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. Now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine, all he does is build car manufacturing plants. He's the biggest in the world. I mean, honestly, I joke about it. He can't walk across the street. In that way, he's like.
It makes a little more sense. If I get, I will steal, man. I will steal, man. Even this
big monster now.
Here
the cars to us now. We're going to put a 100%
100%
tariff
tariff.
able to sell those guys.
And if I get elected, we'll put a tariff
Now,
on it. If I don't get elected,
it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath.
Oh, that's going to be the least of it, referring to the automobile industry. That's going to be the least of it. Surely what he meant by that was actual violence. A bloodbath. There are people out there, by the way, who are so painfully ignorant, so willfully stupid, they don't know that either car parts or cars are manufactured in China. Some people are like, it's so stupid. He couldn't have meant the automobile industry because cars aren't made in China. Wow. You got people who are so stupid, so willfully ignorant, they don't know what bloodbath means. What else does that mean other than violence in the streets? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just waiting. I'm counting down the hours for Merriam-Webster Dictionary to memory hole the definition, to Orwellian make it disappear. Bloodbath, a major economic disaster, a market bloodbath. You know why I know what market bloodbath means? Because I lived through 2008. I've lived long enough to know that it's an actual, well-known, often used economic term. There are people out there who are so ignorant, so stupid, they don't know that cars and car parts are made in China. They don't know that bloodbath is an actual economic term, and they see a 17-second clip and think that Trump has promised violence in the streets, if not elected. But not just dumb, and I'm not saying dumb, okay, I'll say dumb, ignorant, ill-informed, low-level, low-information voters, some for legitimate, understandable reasons. Everyone's living their lives. You can't be on Twitter as often as I'm on Twitter. Can't live on the internet the way I live on the internet. So not all of it is of bad faith. Some of it is, however. And the people pulling the strings, the people using you or the ill-informed, the low-information voters out there as violent tools or tools for violence, the ones doing it on purpose deserve to get called out. And I was spending the better part of yesterday evening calling them up. But there's one in particular. There's one in particular that I felt the need to call out because, maybe he didn't know that what the tweet was about. Mark Elias, people. Mark Elias, founder Democracy Docket, chair at Elias Law Group. His dog's name is Bodhi. He's got a good-looking dog. Ordinarily, I tend to think people with dogs are good people, but I'm told Jeffrey Dahmer had a dog also. I don't know if he did. I'm just joking. Mark Elias retweets Aiken. By the way, it's not an innocent, I just didn't know any better retweet. After a given point in time, you get to presume malice and not chalk things up to ignorance. Mark Elias tweets, the next wave of Republican attacks on our election is coming. On our elections is coming. In fact, it may have already begun. We know it will be ruthless and shameless. Trump is admitting it will also be violent. That's Mark Elias, an attorney, either rage retweeting without knowing or knowing and not caring. And I strongly suspect it's the latter. And I said, don't ever let Mark Elias forget he participated in the promulgation of a grotesque lie. Quite symbolic of his career. I was quite happy with that. But just as an illustration of how the lie travels across the world before the truth has the time to put its shoes on. I don't want to lose this here. I don't know who some of these people are. Trump says if he's not elected, it will be a bloodbath for the country. FYI, if he is elected, it will also be a bloodbath based on his intentions. The choice is clear. The choice is as clear as the threat. Okay. Michael McCain, DOJ. What the F do you call this? Tim Hannon, F this traitor. You got Mark Elias over there. John Seifert, disqualifying. He's threatening violence. Once again, Brett, I don't know who these people are. And then the headlines. The headlines are just outrageous. I want to say, it's not just at this point in time promulgating a lie, something that you can weaponize for politics. This is people who are willing to use other people as a means to their ends, even if it means, and especially if it means, resorting to violence or allowing them to be triggered into violence. We talk about the political permission slip very often on this channel with Robert Barnes. The politicians plant the seeds out there. They issue the political permission slip for violence. Remember the summer of love, BLM burning down cities? When you have Kamala Harris saying, we're going to bail you out of jail, that's a political permission slip. When you have the media saying they will literally do violence to you in the streets if Trump is not elected. That's what he means by it. Here's the 17-second lie of a clip. If something's an existential threat to you, you really are only going to do one thing through whatever means necessary, neutralize that threat. And these ringleaders, these puppet masters, these liars, right to Mark Elias, are willing to whip up the general public into a frenzied rage where anything is going to be justified, because if they don't do something, there will be a bloodbath in the streets if Trump doesn't get elected. As if they had no idea what he actually meant. And not what he even meant, what he said. I don't recall. I don't know. I was angry last week when Scott McAfee didn't disqualify Fani Willis. I was when was I woke up in the middle of the night after the State of the Union address, just genuinely dismayed, genuinely discouraged. Last night I was repulsed, revolted. And you see how it happens. And I'm tagging Elon Musk. Not only do the community notes not work, they're worse than useless. They're destructive. When you have a system such as community notes, and you think it is intended to flag lies, disinformation, things that are deliberately, maliciously taken out of context to convey a meaning that is not the original or intended meaning, when you have a system like that, when you see a community note, and it's the one, who was it that had big boobs? Not someone from the Oscars. It said something about her big boobs, and her boobs aren't that big, and then the community note said, yes, they are. Haha. Okay, you know it's being toyed with there. When you have the community notes on the Liver King saying his secret ingredient is actually not meat, but steroids, you know it's being gamed. But there are other times when you genuinely think it's useful. There are also other times where when you don't see it, it's because you don't think it's necessary to be there. Aiken's tweet, last I checked, ACYN, let me just see if it's 24 hours old now, and still does not have a community note on it, which is going to lead the ignorant to say, I guess it doesn't deserve one. Or it's going to lead the willfully blind or the malicious to say, it doesn't have one, so I get to pretend that that's what he meant. So that's it. It's disgusting and it's wild and it's terrible. And Elon Musk should be put on notice. It's not just that community notes has been weaponized. It doesn't work. It's destructive. And it's becoming a popularity contest where I'm sure Aiken, Midas Touch, has a number of people vote it down as not helpful so that I don't get the community note. Media's run with the headlines. The lie has now poisoned the minds of more people that can ever be undone. And when the truth comes around, big effing deal. If you don't actually see violence from this, my goodness, did we come close? Okay, Barnes is in the backdrop. For those of you who don't know how things work, if you're new to the channel, Viva Fry, David Fry, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida rumbler. I'm on the road, so I'm on my computer with the computer mic. I trimmed the beard down a little bit because it looked a little crazy. We are live across the interwebs. Yes, we are live on Rumble. We are live on vivabarneslaw.locals.com. And before I bring Barnes in, you may have noticed, everybody, that as you came to the stream, it said that this stream contains a paid promotion. Because it does, people. Let me see. Is this it here? I got to play this. Here we go. Boom. Are we seeing a beautiful video? Yeah, we are. Hold on. How do I maximize this? Yes. Look at gold, people. It's not for idolatry purposes. It's for investment purposes. So the new central digital bank currency is coming and could replace your dollars with digital currency. It's not good. It's coming if it's not already here. Every transaction you make of $600 and more, you got to report. Would it come? With it would come surveillance to our lives, freezing of assets, as we've seen in Canada, and government control over our bank accounts and how we spend our money. Americans who want to protect their liberty and privacy need to prepare themselves for what's to come. That's why many Americans are turning to physical gold and silver to diversify their wealth. I got one little Queen Elizabeth. If I need to hide it in my cavity, I don't know who's going to take it out, but I'm also told that's the first place they look. But whatever. Physical gold, it's like holding like actual physical Bitcoin. If you want to help protect your retirement, you should look into gold and call Preserve Gold today. They'll explore the right options for you and help you with the process to get either physical gold or to roll your IRA or 401k into gold or gold-related accounts. It's easy. Owning physical gold, it might feel like idolatry, and it does a little bit, but it's an investment. And it's one that has historically proven to be good and outperforming pretty much everything else. And, it doesn't, a little FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried is not going to just take all your virtual gold and run off with it when you've got it, buried in your backyard. Preserve Gold is BBB accredited with 0 consumer complaints and hundreds of satisfied customers. They're also the founding member of the Precious Metals Associations. So you know you're in good hands. So you know you're in good hands. As an exclusive offer for Viva Fry, they'll give you up to $10,000 in free gold and silver with a qualifying purchase or retirement account rollover. They'll even throw a $500 credit if you request your investor guide today. Check it out. Go to Preserve Gold. The link is in the description. preservegold.com/Viva today. Get your free gold and silver investment guide. Take the first look to diversify, but gold has been around for 5,000 years. When was the golden calf? Do not worship gold, but it does not hurt if you can to acquire some as an investment. preservegold.com/Viva. Get your free gold. Get your guide today. Preserve Gold. Link is in the description. Thank you very much, Preserve Gold and Booyah. Now, with that said, everybody, let me see. Make sure we're good here. Okay. I'm not going to keep Barnes waiting in the back. I can't do it. Barnes looks like he's ready to roll. We got some rage. We're going to rage tonight, people. Robert, bringing you in. 3, 2, 1. Sir, how goes the battle?
Good. The people had some funny jokes about the gold reading script that they weren't sure putting it in your cavities was part of the script. Maybe they reminded me of the South Park episode where Cartman's like, I know every Jew has a little gold hidden. And the kid's like, you're lying. And he's like, oh, okay. And he gives it to him. He goes, oh, no, everybody knows that's the fake one. You got another one that's under,
I didn't even realize there is a pun in that they used to put gold in cavities, and then you should hide your gold in cavities. Okay, we have an above average community, Robert. Robert, I was going to say, like, you're dropping bombs in your law proceedings now, but I don't know if someone's going to say, take the clip. Viva said Barnes is dropping bombs, and he's declared war on the U.S. Robert, what's the book that you have over your shoulders tonight?
It's one, a certain former president who's running for president should probably digest at least the Cliff Notes version of. It's a gift of Mark Robert of America's Untold Stories with he and Eric Hunley about a particular general's role in the assassination of President John Kennedy. And given that Trump is currently figuring out which Mike Pence wannabe lookalike to put as his own vice president, currently he's thinking, oh, I'll put a black Mike Pence in. What a genius move that would be. By putting Tim Scott in, who makes Mike Pence look like a good vice president by comparison. So given the bad decisions currently being contemplated at the Trump campaign, just a little reminder of that's what if you put someone like Tim Scott on the ticket, that no sensible life insurance policy would sell you life insurance for the next year. So it's trying to get the warning out to as many people and places in Trump world as possible, as he contemplates reverting back to the worst of Trump 2020 currently.
He did. I think he might have gotten the message about the jibby jab truth post where he sort of walked it back a little bit and said something.
People responded to your criticism of it, saying, oh, that he never said that. That's because he deleted it after being embarrassed and humiliated again by his idiotic support of that ridiculous Operation Warp Speed, one of the dumbest names ever come up with. You know what you don't want at Warp Speed? A vaccine. That's what you don't want. A drug. And of course, it's a disaster and a debacle. And it's probably his Achilles heel for his 2024 campaign that could leak votes to Robert Kennedy if he keeps going down that path. That there's a part of Trump that doesn't want to recognize he got hoodwinked. Pfizer and the deep state apparatus, the same deep state apparatus that was conspiring against his 2020 election. Bill Barr at the Justice Department covering up the Biden crimes and covering up the voting fraud. The CISA helping to coordinate and organize the voter fraud, as well as censorship on social media platforms. These were Trump's own appointees doing this to Trump. Just as Deborah Birx has now bragged about how she lied to Trump to get him to do things like go along early on with the lockdowns, to go along with the vaccine rush, to go along with a lot of mandates early on. She's bragging about it. And yet Trump hasn't called her out on it. Fauci's bragged about how he misled him. Trump hasn't called him out on it. And by contrast, he has said nothing on the Amos Miller case, even though Pennsylvania is in a razor thin race. He said nothing about the Brooke Jackson case exposing Pfizer vaccine fraud that was, again, committed against him and his administration and the American people. He said nothing about Julian Assange or Edward Snowden. By contrast, Kennedy has publicly supported Brooke Jackson, publicly supported Amos Miller, publicly called for the pardons of Julian Assange and Edward Snowden, publicly called for accountability for Fauci and Birx and everybody that was in the wrong during the pandemic, publicly called for purging the entire deep state apparatus at the FDA, USDA, and the FBI and the CIA. Trump's asleep at the wheel at the moment, unfortunately. And so it's going to take a lot of people drawing it to Tim Scott as a VP would be literally a fateful decision for President Trump for his political prospects in terms of an effective administration. And frankly, for his physical well-being, as this book is a helpful reminder of.
Because you use the analogy that it would be like putting it would be like JFK hiring LBJ, appointing LBJ to be his VP.
That's exactly right. The moment John Kennedy did that is the moment he signed his death warrant. He didn't realize it. His choice was go along with the deep state or sign your death warrant. He didn't realize that's what the consequences of LBJ were, but it's what it was. And that's what the consequences of a Tim Scott VP would be. It would be Trump would have to go along with the deep state or he'd be signing his death warrant.
Robert, I was going to ask you something here. I forgot. Oh, but I just want to let everybody know I'm at a hotel. The internet is sort of shoddy. So apparently it's smooth going out, but it gets choppy on my end. So if I look confused for a second, it might have been because you glitched up. And if you see me like doing this, it's nothing serious. I'm sitting on a freaking hotel chair with a pillow on it because I
thought that's where you were hiding the
high enough
gold
to the camera, and it's not comfortable. No, I don't travel. That's oh God, it's out. The other thing I was just going to ask you, Robert. So, chat. Well, I'll take some super chats before we get going here, and then we're going to get into the subjects of the night. Can I bring this one up? Here we go. We'll see. It takes a delay to bring up. Why is Putin endorsing Biden and giving jabs towards Trump? What's the strategy here? I don't get it. This is from a long number. I haven't seen it. What did Putin say about Biden?
He just wants to troll the U.S. That's Putin is a very effective troll when he wants to be a troll.
And I'll bring this one up. It says, I trimmed my beard because I was looking a little crazy. Viva. What exactly might you be implying here? I felt crazy yesterday. It's like whack-a-mole. Like I'm just trying to put the video everywhere where everybody's lying about the video. Robert, what can be done? Because there's certain hoaxes that are just, they're trying to demonize him. There's other hoaxes that can lead to immediate violence. You're not allowed wrongly screaming fire in a crowded theater because you can cause panic and get people killed in a stampede. Wrongly saying publicly, proudly, and loudly that Trump has called for violence on the general population if not elected, when it's an outright lie. Where is there any potential exposure, and what can people do to hold those to account?
Well, it's always interesting what Trump has sued on and what he hasn't sued on, because this kind of claim, a false headline, because usually buried in the story is the correct context of the quote. So it's the false headline more than anything else. But the false headlines are considered independently actionable that cannot be saved or salvaged by the content of the story, because so many people only read the headline. And so this statement, stripped of its context, implies an assertion of fact that he said something specific that he did not in fact say. That's actionable as libel. What's interesting is Trump never sues on those grounds. He sues on more eclectic grounds. And I think some of that is legal advice. But some of it may be Trump. You never know fully with Trump. He does make his own decisions in his own way. And so it's a classic case of libel. I mean, it really is. It's not a mistake. It's not an opinion about what he said. It's that headline right there. Is that the New York Times?
That's the Robert. It's the New York Times.
See, like that,
Trump said.
The thing is, it would be like Trump to not sue on this for another reason. Trump believes that people only remember that Trump. It's the old rule. My brother taught me as a debate high school student. He who defines the terms wins the debate. Trump generally will not highlight something that keeping it in the news could have a negative underlying affiliation or association. So by keeping it in the news, by bringing suit, it'd be Trump bloodbath, Trump bloodbath, Trump bloodbath. He knows that would be the constant associative memory identification. Like, for example, I suspect Trump deliberately leaked that his wife had borrowed from Michelle Obama's speech. Now, in fact, she really quite kind of hadn't, but the media was going to jump on it as a criticism of Trump. But what Trump knew was that all of the TV news coverage, which a lot of people only see and remember the visuals, would have her next to Obama's wife. And while ordinary people Republicans might say, why would you want that affiliation? She did. Melania Trump liked Michelle Obama. So it was a favor of Trump to his wife, who didn't really want him to run for president in the first place, to affiliate the two. And he got the media to take the bite to bite on it by suggesting there was some sort of perjury, there was some sort of plagiarism there when it really wasn't. It was just, how do I get the media to put this image up all across the country? So he likes these affiliations. So, like, Robert Kennedy got into some trouble for comparing what was happening in the pandemic to what happened to various victims of the genocide.
The Anne Frank comment.
And Frank comment. He walked it back, I think, sincerely. I wouldn't have. But Trump would have deliberately done something like that to keep it in the news, to keep pandemic policy equals I'm going to look like Anne Frank. Pandemic policy equals, right? I mean, that may be why he doesn't. Some of these controversies, he doesn't like the Charlottesville one. He could have kept bringing up how they lied about it. He generally doesn't, because he doesn't want that affiliate. He doesn't want the video image on the local or nightly news to be Charlottesville Trump. So that may be why he doesn't sue here, for political reasons. But legally speaking, he would have a claim.
I'm going to bring this one up because I actually want to. Francis Chartrand. Viva, time to squeeze Elon about community notes. He had to do damage control today versus having the built-in mechanism doing its job. How do we squeeze him? Here's how you squeeze him. Share this tweet. I like, he hasn't blocked me yet, nor has he acknowledged. I think I was among the first.
Has he blocked Brett Weinstein for some reason?
He blocked.
He gets a little petulant now and then. For a billionaire, he has mostly a thick skin, but now and then it can be a little thin.
No, but say, like, first of all, it might have been an accident. He might not have known, but now that I guess he knows. But the point is that I've
yeah, what he did to Don Lemon was wonderful. That was God. You know what? Given it's Don Lemon, you can call that a bitch slap.
I call it. That's a lemon drop. Bada bing, bada boom. Everyone share the
I can't
tweet.
think of that in a positive way, because I represented the guy that Don Lemon harassed over a lemon, call it lemon drop, and then he went and grabbed certain parts of his body.
Well, Robert, do advise the people what is the sexual connotation of a lemon drop? It's not just a drink. There's a double entendre there.
Oh, I have no idea.
I'll look it up while you talk, Robert.
What we have a dictionary question.
I'll look it up while you tell us what's on the menu for tonight.
So we did our board poll, and what we'll do is the top topic tonight. It was a close contest. No favorites was the favorite, as usual. But the TikTok ban, we'll cover that off the top. Then we got 4 different subtopics related to Trump. We got the big Fani getting spanked, but not removed. We got the New York trial case, discovery and delay. We got the partial dismissal in Georgia. We got the dismissal motions partially being heard in Florida. Then we got Riley Gaines suing the NCAA over allowing men into women's sports. Supreme Court had 2 rulings this week. When can somebody block you on social media when they're a public official? And the first interpretation of the First Step law, which was a Trump proposed criminal justice reform. We got another parent shooting verdict out of Michigan. Boeing whistleblower getting Epsteined, or treated like the octopus murder journalist. We got this is a big case that almost nobody's talking about. But our above average members at the board at vivabarneslaw.locals.com did bring it up. And this is the beneficial ownership law, which was draconian surveillance state law, struck down as unconstitutional by a federal court. Big ruling on that. We'll discuss that. Scientology versus Leah Remini, the first judicial ruling in that case. What part of the case goes forward? We got a couple of bonus topics. Fox sued over the death of a war reporter in Ukraine. We got Amos Miller filing we filed his challenge for the order of food destruction this week in court. We got a few comments on Tyson Foods getting caught up in another legal controversy, and probably my favorite suit of the week, San Fran being sued for being a shithole. So that'll
I
be
love
fun.
it.
And this reference here is the Law Center site is up and going. This is the lead law center, was Free America Law Center. Free America Law Center is the organization that owns it. We just rebranded the name of the website. 1776lawcenter.com is now up and going. Lead organization supporting Amos Miller, lead organization supporting Brooke Jackson, lead organization supporting a lot of challenges to the vaccine mandates, lead organization helping out on food freedom, financial freedom, political freedom, medical freedom, all of those key critical issues that are underrepresented in the world of law. We have court documents linked, we have news interviews linked, we have interviews with the clients in some cases linked. We'll have more content put up there constantly. We got merchandise up if you want that at 1776lawcenter.com.
Now, I said I was going to bring up the Urban Dictionary definition for lemon drop, but I know that we have a crowd who would not appreciate it, so I will not bring it up, but the link is in the chat. All right, Robert, so we're starting with, are we starting with TikTok?
Yes.
All right. I'll ask you the question publicly that I asked you, that I texted you last week. I read through the TikTok bill. My immediate question and my only question is, what does this solve by way of problem that existing legislation is unable to resolve? You have the Espionage Act. I can't pretend to know how that has been applied. I know some examples. If the Espionage Act was used to go after Julian Assange, a non-American who never stepped foot on American soil, who committed the crime from wherever, if they used the Espionage Act on him, and the concern is that China, through this algorithm, is going to be spying on American citizens, why would the Espionage Act not be the solution in and of itself to deal with the problem that they're identifying, as opposed to paving the way for, say the words national security threat, and you can find a pretext to shut down a social media site. And then I had some creative applications as to how they might apply it to Rumble, how they might apply it to Truth Social, if it's deemed to be operating under the direction of an adversarial nation. Bottom line of the TikTok ban, for now, it's going after TikTok, whatever parent company owns it. And the basis is national security due to spying, espionage, collecting data, et cetera, et cetera. They've ordered basically either the sale of the company, or what are the other remedies that they're asking for under that bill? But bottom line, tell us why it's necessary and what the risks are and whether or not I'm out in left field.
Politically, when you see Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, Robert Kennedy, and Vivek all on the same side against a bill, chances are it's a bad bill. When Dan Crenshaw and the Democratic Party and the Biden administration are on supporting the bill, it's a bad bill. That's pretty much a guarantee. Only Benji Shapiro could confuse that with something positive. I guess you got to meet him this week. The people were asking, did he wear some of those DeSantis high heel boots? He was looking a little taller than normal.
Dude, he's definitely taller than me, and he's in very good shape. So give him credit for that. He's physically, in good shape. But I don't know if you remembered.
He thinks your grandparents should work until they're 85. He was announcing that bit of genius insight this week. But politically, the problem with the bill is that it gives way too much power to President Biden. As you pointed out, it didn't limit the bill to just Chinese ownership of a foreign app. It included a broad range of defining foreign enemy or adversary. Number one. So it's not China specific. Number two, it didn't require ownership, didn't require even substantive control. It allowed anybody that's considered an agent of a foreign adversary to be subject to the rule. So that's problem number two. Problem number three is it allows the president basically to decide who that is, which means he could ban Truth right in the middle of the election using this TikTok ban law. He could ban Truth in the middle of the election saying Trump's an agent of the Russian government, for example. So he could ban Rumble in the middle of the election. saying that Rumble allows RT, so thereby is an agent of a foreign adversary. So this law is a deep state empowerment law. It's the Patriot Act 2.0 applied to social media. Rand Paul is right. Vivek is right. Robert Kennedy is right. Thomas Massey is right. It is a political disaster for anybody who opposes the surveillance state having any more power. Because the last aspect of the law politically that's problematic is if you want to do something with China, then just do it with China, number one. And number two, do it specifically in a way that the president just has broad discretion to interpret things. Don't allow that to happen. That's how we're in so many disasters, is delegating to the administrative state undiscretionary limitation on what they do. But last but not least, why apply it to Americans? Large parts of the bill make certain things a crime for Americans to do. Don't
For
tell
the
me it's a
hosting.
China ban bill when you're going to lock up Americans over it. So Dan Crenshaw is lying like usual. The people supporting this bill are just dead wrong. There's some prominent, decent conservatives that are on board with this dumb bill, and they shouldn't be. But of course, almost all of them are on board the Patriot Act. So it's the same disastrous mindset that you just, before it was, dangle anti-communism, you get people to do dumb stuff. Dangle anti-terrorism, you get people to do dumb stuff. And now it's dangle anti-China, and you get people to do dumb stuff. To his credit, Trump saw through this right away, and he recognized the biggest beneficiary will be Zuckerberg. This would help Facebook and Instagram, who TikTok is stealing customers from. Facebook, who has been in bed with the Biden administration and the leading censorship organization in all of social media for the last 5 years. The same Zuckerberg that helped steal the election for his fraudulency the second Joe Biden to put him in power in the first place. And so Trump, to his credit, once again, his instincts dead on about this bill. Now, the legal side of it is this bill doesn't come anywhere close to being constitutional. It's highly likely that it's purely for political theater, because the probability this law gets enjoined by a federal court is about 85 to 90%. And that's because of the Packingham decision issued just about 7 years ago. And there the Supreme Court said you could not even prohibit perverts from using social media to access young people, talking about people that are convicted pedos. And so the Supreme Court, I think it was unanimously, said you can't ban that much speech. That's not within your rights. Even if your objective is something that's laudable, you can't use a laudable objective to illicitly suppress and censor millions of Americans on every possible subject and topic. And well, really, here's tens of thousands. There's only that many that have been convicted. Otherwise, you just look for connections to a certain named foundation, as a certain country was in the news. As Count Dankula said, just Google Haiti Clinton Foundation. You might find out some interesting things. I don't encourage you to look up why the gang leader is named Barbecue, though Alex Jones suggested maybe we could come up with a cannibalism-inspired cookbook in honor of Haiti. But the Constitution, if you couldn't even ban criminal convicts from accessing social media on the grounds that it would allow them to use it to access minors, then because it prohibited too much speech, was overbroad, was vague, and First Amendment prohibitive, this TikTok ban gets nowhere near that. Because again, it'd be one thing if it was saying we're not going to allow Chinese ownership of something, but that's not what they're doing. They're saying the president of the United States has the power to prohibit speech, to ban speech of tens of millions of Americans. That is not constitutional yesterday, today, or tomorrow.
But they named the company in particular, and I'm trying to refresh my memory as to what a bill of attainder is. But it seems that this piece of legislation is passed specifically to go after TikTok specifically and the parent corporation. How is that legal?
I mean, that raises its own issues, but if they limited it to foreign ownership, that they're not going to allow a foreign nation to control a social media app with X percentage of ownership. And there's a reason why they're limiting it to foreign adversary, because there's issues with foreign ownership. Look up the Saudis and look up a lot of people with ownership interest of a lot of different places. But is that there would be separate problems with that. But if they limited it to, the other problem is calling somebody a foreign adversary. We have no declaration of war with anyone. So if there's no declaration of war with anyone, I have a problem calling anyone a foreign adversary constitutionally. But independent of that, the core problem of this is it prohibits speech. It's one thing if it prohibited ownership, it could require as its remedies divestiture, but that's not what they're doing. They're instead trying to give the president the power to ban social media apps that they don't like. And that's there's no aspect of that. That's banning speech. People are like, how does it ban speech? If you prohibited the means of speech, then you've prohibited speech. You're banning people from communicating using a particular method or mechanism that is often necessary for their communicative speech, associative activities, religiously expressive conduct, all of that. Press, basically it violates every single component of the First Amendment. Right of free press, right of free speech, right of free association, right of religious affiliation and expression, and right to petition your government for redress of grievances, because TikTok and other social media is used for all those forms and formats. So they've taken a legitimate concern about foreign government data harvesting, and rather than write a law about foreign government data harvesting, they've written a law trying to prohibit speech. This is deep state control of all social media apps in America. That's what this bill should be called. Everybody who voted for it is too stupid.
Robert, Tim Pool had floated the idea, and others were echoing it, that this bill only gained traction in light of trending topics on TikTok being anti-Israeli. And I was a little skeptical at first. And I was like, now this bill, they were talking about going after TikTok from well before the events of October 7 and what followed afterwards. Then I saw this tweet from the Jewish Federation. We want all social media networks to catch anti-Semitic and hateful language. And when they don't, it's time to say, time's up, TikTok. And then I began to think that there might be something to this. What are your thoughts? I mean, is this motivated directly?
Pointed this out as well. TikTok has been one of the primary platforms that anti-Israeli communications have occurred. And there's been a proclivity, including by Governor DeSantis in Florida and Governor Noem of South Dakota, to pass these stupid hate speech laws. The hate speech laws are stupid, no matter who the target or who the beneficiary is or who the target is. That doesn't matter. They're stupid laws. Now, that's different than, I think at times, the anti-Israeli crowd has minimized some of what's happened on college campuses, because there's a difference there. There's permissive speech, and then there's impermissible harassment, impermissible stalking, things like that. We'll get into that with the Leah Remini versus Scientology case a little bit later, where a court drew the correct distinction. But in these other cases, they're really just trying to ban speech that they don't like. They're trying to prohibit platforms they don't like. So Trump was originally trying to limit Chinese ownership and data mining through TikTok, and he got a lot of correct blowback. And he correctly figured out, okay, actually banning TikTok makes no sense. That if we want to focus on data mining issues, focus on data mining issues. You can prohibit a foreign government from doing certain things. That's not a problem. China is a communist country, so pretty much everything is ultimately owned by the government. So, they decided to format it that way. But that's not what they're doing here. That's the political pretext in order to get a bunch of people to sign on that are too stupid to read the actual bill, or don't care because they're really deep state propagandists at heart, or been bought off by the deep state. It's not a coincidence people like Matt Gaetz realize this bill is problematic. Others on the populist side started to wake up. I hope more wake up, but we'll see. Chances are a bill's going to pass, and then a court's going to declare it unconstitutional. They could do so on separate grounds. It's vague. It's overly broad. It vests too much discretion in the executive branch. There's other things that run. It may be to a degree considered a bill of attainder. But the First Amendment's the easiest and clearest grounds that this law is highly unlikely to ever be enforceable in the United States.
Robert, I want to share this before speaking of deep state, whatever you want to call them.
One-Eye McCain.
Listen to this, by the way. Don't trust your lying eyes. Trust Dan Crenshaw when he tells you that, the intelligence is not manipulating media in America.
That's everything TikTok has, which means data on all Americans. And with data and with access to your, app that you're addicted to, you can vastly manipulate an entire population, which the Chinese have done already.
Are you worried that our intelligence agencies are doing the same thing domestically?
Am I worried that I know that they're not.
They're not manipulating Americans and not
Yes, I know.
controlling the flow of information.
I mean, the brazenness of saying, "Oh, it's so easy to do, and China's definitely done it," but oh no, we've never done it. Oh, what? What? I mean, that's what a fraud that guy is.
It's incredulous.
That's the kind of senator. It's Tim Scott is the Dan Crenshaw of the Senate that Trump is currently considering for his vice presidency. I mean, that's what a fraud that guy is. That's why, you know, that old part of the Republican Party I had zero interest in and still have zero interest in. The Ben Shapiro, Mitt Romney, John McCain wing of the party is not a party I have any interest in whatsoever. But yeah, it's the fact that these people are overtly and openly lying to you about this bill should tell you everything you need to know. But there's too many cowards and deep state sycophants in the House and the Senate to actually vote it down. But this is one place where the courts probably will step in and declare it unconstitutional, because the Packingham decision is pretty clear precedent applicable to the case. By the way, the Federalist Society has been going around telling everybody why it's fine and constitutional. That's why you cannot trust the leaders at the Federalist Society, as we learned in our transition to our first Trump case. Big honorary member of the Federalist Society, a certain corrupt state court judge in Georgia.
Before we get there, everyone, we're going to end it on YouTube now, but I want to read everyone's Rumble rants on YouTube and give them the exposure they deserve. Carlisle says, "See you in Vegas for the birthday bash for Robert Barnes. What can I bring to you for you to sign? I'm super excited to meet you and Robert. Anything."
Hey, whatever you bring. There's still some available tickets left for the 1776 Law Center's inaugural fundraiser, which is the 50th birthday party of yours truly in Las Vegas, Saturday, April 13th, coming up just a few weeks.
Andy Pearson says, "Oh my God," he said, "bloodbath, #sarcasm. J Law Bronco, it is called a prison wallet where you should hide your gold." K Sorensen 917, "Viva, can you please make a standalone comprehensive Amos Miller recap video? I want to be able to better share the situation with my dad who drinks raw milk. I'll figure something out there." Verax, "Can Trump sue for defamation for the rope allegations when it was never found?" We talked about that. Elon still censors.
To that person, by the way, we have a bunch of links on Amos Miller's case in the news, interviews, broadcast, publications, you name it, that court documents that you can point people to, and they say, okay, what's this Amos Miller case about? They can go to 1776lawcenter.com. They can read the interview, see the interviews. They can read the stories. They come from a wide range of locations and places. They can read the court documents themselves and make up their own mind.
Can Trump sue for defamation? We got there. PJ Parkin, Elon still censors finepeople.org on X. Douglas Mackey did jail time for a meme in 2016 election. Here's hoping equal justice is served, from Maduding. Then we got Biden just shared the bloodbath clip. Oh no, it's wild. Biden shared it. HQ put out a press release. "I'm a paid member on Locals, but can only find the live stream on my phone, not Apple TV. What gives? I don't know, but we're live on Locals. VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com right now. And now we're only going to be live on Rumble and Locals because we're ending on YouTube. So coming over, the link is in the pinned comment. And if you're not coming, why not? But 4,323, there should be less than that in 5 seconds. Heading on over to the free speech platform, Rumble, VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com, 1776lawcenter.com. Okay, and we're ending on YouTube. Bam. Robert, I look, I don't want to say, I don't want to spin it that I got it more right than wrong. I said they weren't going to dismiss the charges. The Judge McAfee was not going to dismiss the indictment. He had to disqualify both. And he somehow went with a combination that makes absolutely no sense on its face logically, and even less sense if you read the decision, unless he was threatened or whatever. And he said, look, I cannot get rid of Fani Willis, but I'm going to make it so that she will be gotten rid of through other means. I don't need to recap it for anybody who's out there. If you don't know what's going on, then my goodness, you're new to the channel like tonight. Fani Willis not disqualified from the prosecution of the RICO charges against Trump, Roman, et al., but she had to make a hard decision, pun intended, to boot Nathan Wade from the file or disqualify herself and her whole office. She didn't have to wait long, Nathan Wade, because democracy and justice are their North Star. He tendered his resignation within hours of Scott McAfee's decision in a resignation letter that everyone who saw him testify knows he did not draft himself. My only question was, Was it Kamala Harris who drafted it, or her communications team? Sure as hell wasn't Kamala Harris. Was it Fani Willis's team? Who knows? The judge split the baby, and I say in so splitting the baby of justice, he killed the baby of justice. It's still a net positive unequivocally for Trump. Fani Willis staying on this case, given what Judge McAfee said about her in the decision, no one's going to take her seriously, but I'm curious to know your thoughts. And what do you think?
Basically, Judge McAfee kicked Nathan Wade out of bed with Fani Willis, and he hopped into bed with her instead. And that was, in my view, ill-advised. My theory was, at the very beginning, I was skeptical he would do anything due to my skepticism of the Fulton County Courthouse, whose notorious political partisan corruption is the only reason this case or anything related to January 6th even ever happened. For those who don't remember, the only election contest President Trump brought in court was in Georgia. That was the only state. None of the other cases or the rest were an election contest case. The only one he brought was in Georgia. It was detailed with hundreds and hundreds of pages of declarations and sworn testimony and investigative research, detailed aspects of law. I know about it because I didn't bring that particular election contest, but I was part of crafting and drafting the whole thing leading up to it. I left the case when it became clear they were going to let some other people run it, and I didn't have confidence in how they would handle it. And given a bunch of them ended up indicted, I guess my instincts were okay on that. But it was the Fulton County court system that corruptly violated the state law and refused to schedule a hearing, even though state law required a hearing within 5 days of it being brought. And that's the only reason why Georgia never got fully adjudicated. The reason why Georgia's impact on the rest of the states never got fully adjudicated. The reason why January 6th could even happen in the first place. The only reason that there was any alternate elector program in Georgia at all for even it to occur. So it's the corruption of the Fulton County court system that we're even here. So depending on the same Fulton County court system to take action when they could see corruption by the prosecutor plainly in view was probably a bridge too far. Now, I changed my view 2/3 the way through because the scale and scope of the corruption was compounded by perjury, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering by the prosecutor herself in front of this very judge that the whole world got to witness. So in order for the judge to allow her to stay on the case required he not only be without a conscience as to the concerns about the law, to have no constitutional conscience, it required, and no character, it also required he be politically inept, that he be so dumb, politically out of it, that he not recognize that leaving her on would do irreparable damage to the integrity and the appearance of integrity in the judiciary itself. And that's the only place I was wrong. I thought his political IQ wasn't that low. Most people know don't hop into bed with Fani Willis. But he did. And it shows that there's no depth. I mean, when I was first in Georgia, on behalf of President Trump, who called me from the White House to go down there in 2020, my first statement to the members on our locals board was that they're the biggest bunch of cowards I'd ever met, the Republican Party hierarchy in Georgia. And that's where McAfee comes from. He comes from the Perdue-Kemp political operation. I mean, Sonny Perdue, who Trump made ag secretary, which was one of his terrible decisions for cabinet. I mean, Sonny Perdue, imagine Boss Hogg, but dumber. And that's Sonny Perdue. He even looks like, I was sitting there looking across from him like, this guy can't be that dumb. It's like, usually your corrupt people are smart. He's corrupt and stupid. And so is his nitwit senator relative. I mean, both of them lost because they refused. All they needed to do was say they would stop trading in stocks and making a bunch of money on inside information while they're senators. And both of them, Loeffler and Perdue, refused. That's why they lost. Of course, the Republican establishment there in Georgia blamed Trump for that. That's how stupid they are. But that's who McAfee is. And now I think what the entire judicial system underappreciates is some of us who have been in the weeds, in the trenches of political cases for a quarter century, like I have witnessed this all the time. The political corruption, the political cowardice of many of our jurists and judges in judicial system, as well as the almost inestimable corruption of our prosecutorial branch of power. The ordinary person in America has not. 95% of Americans never experienced the criminal justice system vicariously or directly. The difference is now this is all being broadcast to the whole world, and everybody's seeing an up close view of our criminal justice and civil justice systems. And they're shocked at what they're witnessing, because these judges who are accustomed to weaponizing their power and punishing the dissident outsider on behalf of corrupt insiders don't realize that the only reason they've been getting away with it is nobody who cared noticed. They weren't doing it to the leading candidate for the presidency of the United States of America. And these dimwits don't realize that. They've always got away with it in the past. This is a disaster for the state of Georgia, disaster for the Fulton County Courthouse, a disaster for the American justice system that looks like a joke, because right now it is one.
Now, I'll try to steel man one thing for Scott McAfee. Set aside the question of dignity and reputation, which I think he's shredded his own. The argument could be made: what's the benefit of booting Fani Willis from the file as opposed to excoriating her in the decision and leaving her in? You boot her from the file, you appoint another DA. They'll say it comes from a more red-leaning
That's the
district.
problem. The issue is no other DA would have taken the case.
Well, but then
because the way it would have gone is her whole office would have been disqualified. And that's what he skipped over. He applied the legal standard for line prosecutors having a conflict that wasn't the boss. When the boss he has to disqualify not just the special prosecutor, the whole office. And so once you found the special prosecutor to be disqualified, you had to disqualify the whole office. So under these, because it was the boss that put him in charge in the first place, and it was her corruption that caused the problem. So what would have been the consequences? They would have gone to I think it's a statewide group that would have looked at it. They would have asked somebody else to take it. Nobody else would have in the whole state. And they already knew that. Mm-hmm. So it basically disqualification in this case equaled functional dismissal. And I think that's part of what the judge didn't want on the hook. But I think he's accustomed. He doesn't want this full dismissal to occur. He granted partial dismissal earlier in the week. And then he was out doing press interviews about the case, which he's never should have been doing.
Okay, I thought that was bizarre.
And somehow Megyn Kelly knew what his ruling was the day before. So that suggests things are leaking out of his courtroom. So this is a judge who's politically aware enough to talk to the press, politically aware enough to leak to the press, but not politically aware enough to realize he just made himself a laughingstock in the entire Georgia judicial system, a laughingstock of justice around the world. We're not going to be able to lecture anybody anywhere about a justice or legal system. Rule of law, what a crock. We're not applying it at all. This is a prosecutor who went into a courtroom and committed perjury in front of this judge, and this judge did nothing of consequence about it.
Let me ask you this again to steelman it. There were people who were suggesting, and I don't know if it's true, that if he did disqualify her from this case, it would prejudice other prosecutions that she's working on. Is that the case?
Because the conflict applied specifically and solely to this case.
That's what I was. Okay, I don't feel comfortable enough with my own answer.
Those are people that think sometimes if you have a systemic institutional problem, it applies. Like the lab is bad, or a cop has been, framing people. My view on that, by the way, is if that's a problem you have, then everybody should get new trials. Okay, so it's like I don't consider that a terrible thing. It's like, oh, golly gee, other people who got railroaded now get a chance not to be railroaded. Why is that a bad thing? That's your authoritarians on the right talking. People like the dear general there decided to take the law in his own hands and help assassinate a president of the United States. So those are dangerous people when it comes to power. But in that same, we were seeing a sort of comedic version of it with Spies Like Us this weekend. Was the Saturday movie at Viva Locals.com. And another, and they asked the general at one point, would you risk all human life on the planet for this? And he said, for the American way of life, I would. Right. There's an aspect of that, the absurdity of that's true with these kind of people. But no, it wasn't the case here. The only impact of this would mean the case was dead against Trump. And the judge clearly likes being in the limelight, doing TV interviews, having his decisions leaked before the decision is officially published. These are extraordinary events to occur. But he's too politically daft to realize that he just torched his own reputation. With the problem with all of these cases is they're bringing the judiciary into the corruption. They're making the judiciary culpable. They're making the judiciary a co-conspirator in interfering with an election. That's what I think Roberts and Kavanaugh understand, and is why what this decision did is it increased the probability the Supreme Court shuts it all down by using the immunity process to get there. Now, the judge down federal court down in Florida might have an alternative path to get there.
I presume that means we're done with the Fani and we're going to move to the Florida.
Yes.
Okay, now explain what you. I was going to go to Alvin Bragg. We'll get there in a second. What's going on in Florida?
So there were multiple motions to dismiss heard before Judge Cannon, the Southern District of Florida. This is the Trump case concerning the documents case. And she decided not to dismiss on the grounds that the Espionage Act was unconstitutional because she thought some aspects of that could be decided by the jury. I think the Espionage Act is clearly unconstitutional, but we'll leave that for another day. But comments she made at the hearing strongly suggest, according to the reporting of Julie Kelly, reports at American Greatness and elsewhere, is that she's seriously considering a selective prosecution dismissal, which is a long overdue. All of these cases are egregious abuses of the First Amendment. The Justice Department has no power to exercise its civil or criminal law enforcement authority, nor does any attorney general or prosecutor in the country, for politically motivated purposes, to suppress or censor speech, to punish speech, to censor or punish political association, to censor or punish affiliation or petitioning for your redress of grievances, all of which are implicated in pretty much all of these cases, but especially the Georgia D.C. cases on petitioning the government, but to a certain degree in Florida as well. And what Cannon noted is how arbitrary this all appears. That one of the issues brought up in the espionage claim was other people have done the same thing as Trump, who didn't have the legal basis that Trump did with the Presidential Records Act, and none of them ever faced any legal consequence of any kind.
Are we talking specifically about Biden and Clinton?
Talking about Biden and Hillary Clinton, but every single president has done some version of what Trump has done in terms of taking documents, keeping documents, and labeling them presidential records. And so not just what Hillary Clinton did as Secretary of State with taking classified information and putting it on an unsecure private server, not just what Joe Biden did, which was monetize his access to classified information, make sure his son and other people had access to it so they could sell it to foreign governments to line their own pockets. The everything they've accused Trump of, Biden is guilty of. But Trump is not, but Biden is. It's confession through projection on steroids.
Right up to the impeachment for the quid pro quo. I said, by God, you're going to fire that guy. And if you don't, I'm not going to give you $6 billion in aid. And would you know, son of a bitch, 6 hours later. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Exactly. So, but statements she made, Julie Kelly interpreted that the judge, the way she's going to resolve it, rather than dismissing the claim on the Espionage Act, instead is just going to say broadly, no president's ever been prosecuted, period. Nobody has ever been prosecuted under the circumstances that Trump is being prosecuted for. That they've all committed comparable acts, including the incumbent of or worse acts, including the incumbent president of the United States. And consequently, it violates the First and Fifth Amendments of the U.S. Constitution to allow this prosecution to continue. And that would be a ruling that has application in every single criminal and even civil case being brought against Trump, such as the New York civil case. So it will put that into motion as well. Now, Julie Kelly was very confident based on Judge Cannon's comments. I'm less confident just because judges have mostly eviscerated selective prosecution and run away from it because they know how many prosecutions are truly selective and they want to allow them to happen. And so they've failed their constitutional obligation and duty and allowed the prosecution to run roughshod over the First Amendment's prohibition on selective prosecution and the Fifth Amendment's prohibition on arbitrary prosecutions for decades now. But this case might have gone too far. Either way, if Cannon doesn't dismiss on these grounds, that will also only increase or enhance the probabilities the Supreme Court grants a very broad immunity dismissal in the D.C. case that then has application to the rest. Because it's kind of like what we talked about in the Alex Jones cases. It's not just Alex Jones on trial. It's not just Donald Trump on trial. It's the American legal system on trial. And right now, the verdict in the American people keeps coming back guilty of the American legal system. That's why Trump is surging. He's misinterpreted his success in the polls and his success in the primaries as being that just about him, rather than this is the American people rejecting lawfare, saying that they will not approve it and they will rebel against it by voting for Trump to punish the government for doing this and trying to deter and discourage it from occurring again and trying to strip them of the profit they were really seeking, which was for Trump to not be reelected in 2024 or elected anew, as the case may be. So that and smart judges, like I think Kavanaugh and Roberts, based on their ballot decision, I think they recognize that this judicial system is looking horrendous by this. And in order to save the judicial system, they're going to need to save Trump because it's not clear that the district court in Florida will have the same courage, but we will see.
You're going to get a romantic sunset lighting in my hotel, and the lighting is terrible. So once the sun goes down, I don't know what's going to happen. And to address Pitt's chat in the Rumble, I'm not drunk, period. I am enjoying a Scottish gin, the Sassenach. It's actually delicious. Robert, I was having a discussion with someone, and I said, well, if they dismiss the charge, or if the Supreme Court takes up the immunity and dismisses or recognizes broad immunity, then it resolves almost all of the cases. And then I started talking about the New York state indictment on the Stormy Daniels payment, and couldn't make the argument as to how immunity would apply there if those acts predated or preceded.
They were seeking delay. Oh, because all of the acts were while he was president. All the acts of the New York indictment are while he's president.
The hush
even
money
though the
payments,
underlying behavior or incident they're complaining about was pre-president, every incident that they're saying was a crime was while he was president. So it applies to the entire case. The case that you could try to carve a piece out of, Georgia applies to all of it. DC, it applies to all of it. The case in New York, it applies to all of it. In Florida, you could argue a piece of it. You could try to carve out you could try to carve out the obstruction piece. But that's it. And that's because people don't know you can be convicted of obstruction of justice even if there was no underlying crime. It's ridiculous, but it's a thing the courts have found ways around. But it most likely guts all of it. Because it's really hard to separate the two, even in that case, because immunity extends. Because every decision he made after he was president relates back, as they've admitted now in the Florida case, to while he was president. But the New York case, they sought a delay on grounds of, hey, the Supreme Court's handling this, at least let's get guidance from it. But the political hack in charge of the New York case refused and even issued some threatening language to Trump's counsel. But in the end, Bragg had to admit, oh, look, I got 10,000 or so documents I forgot to give you.
You'll have to make this make sense to a Canadian schnook who's never practiced criminal law. I don't remember when he was indicted in New York. It's a long time ago. Is there not a statute of limitations after which, if you don't bring a trial within a reasonable time, you don't get to do it?
Well, that's a speedy trial provision, but you can waive that.
And now the second question was, is there not a positive obligation of disclosure of the prosecution to turn over everything? And to the extent the answer to that is going to be yes, how the hell Alvin Bragg is going to say, I didn't have this documentation. It was the Department of Justice that just gave it to me. How is this happening? And what do we suspect is in the documentation that they just received?
The Justice Department clearly was trying to sandbag Trump with late disclosure of information and documentation on the eve of trial. But Bragg's office office is not well equipped enough to handle it, and it's an obvious grounds for a continuance, or it's a clear basis of a mistrial before the Court of Appeals. So they've admitted that there needs to be a delay, and the only question is how long. And frankly, the judge should delay it long enough for the Supreme Court's decision to come down. He was saying, 30 days. You can't incorporate 10,000 documents in 30 days.
No, but they said they're not relevant, Robert. They said, here, we'll give them to you. They're not relevant, but look them over anyhow.
Yeah, right. I mean, the only way you can know, you can't trust the government's definition of relevance. They lie about that all the time, and they're not competent or capable enough to make that assessment. And because they can't look at the case through a defense perspective very effectively. So if the judge is going to move the case to May, well, why not wait until these immunity judgment comes down, which is going to come down by June? He's just a corrupt hack of a judge who wants to secure a conviction to embarrass Trump, hoping that by doing so, I mean, these are basically misdemeanors. They're charges that have never been brought against it. Not only has no president ever been prosecuted before, no one has ever been prosecuted on these basis, on these charges ever before, on this interpretation of law before. So, I mean, that's how preposterous these cases are.
Well, and just so everybody appreciates, they basically turned one act into 37 or whatever it is felony indictments, because the retainer that was given to Michael Cohen allegedly for these payments was one charge. Signing the check, another charge. Entering it on the ledgers of the books, another charge. And what would otherwise be misdemeanor charges, and maybe one for all of this, they broke down month by month over 8 or 9 months into felony charges. It's a preposterous joke, but just in case anybody didn't fully appreciate that. And the star witness in this trial is a man who was convicted of or pled guilty to perjury.
And you have someone who's a victim of extortion being prosecuted for being the victim of extortion in the case of Trump. Stormy Daniels was trying to extort him on the eve of the election by threatening something that would damage his reputation with his wife. It had nothing to do with the election. They're lying about that. I mean, Trump's reputation was well known. Stormy Daniels would have made no difference in the election. The only person that would be upset about the Stormy Daniels allegations is Trump's wife, which was independent of and totally separate from this. The idea that paying through your lawyer to protect your wife's emotional well-being is now a crime because of how it's labeled in the books is ludicrous. This is done all the time. Dershowitz has pointed this out. What Trump did is commonplace. Commonplace.
Who's the VP? There was a VP back in the day, I forget his name now, who paid to hide a story about his mistress and the baby they had. What was his name?
I mean, well, there was the candidate Edwards who did, and that case was a bogus. Yeah, and they challenged, and most scholars at the time thought that was bogus. So this is just as bogus. It's a preposterous claim at every single level, and they're claiming his criminal act occurred in order to motivate him winning the election, but all the criminal acts occurred after the election. I mean, it's things that make no sense. An honest and honorable judge would have dismissed this case from the get-go. But you have another corrupt New York judge, political hack, overt Democratic political hack, who just wants to see Trump convicted in hopes that influences election day. What none of these judges are realizing is that their actions are leading to a backlash. They are helping Trump, not hurting him, because the American people see through this. But these people are so let them eat cake out of touch. They don't understand that. They've been accustomed to abusing their power forever. It's like the Biden administration. They think of the bloodbath misquote is going to get them somewhere. They can just rerun the 2020 script and it will work. They don't even realize that's not even what worked in 2020. They don't realize right now doing that's only going to drive votes to Kennedy. It's not going to drive votes to Biden. And they don't understand, for the most part, they're just singing to the choir. The liberal professional class that hates Trump. That's not who they have voting problems with. It's the working class they're getting crushed with, whether the working class is black, Asian, Latino, white, northern, western, southern, eastern, doesn't matter. They're getting crushed with that group. And a lot of those ordinary people see this system and they say, this is a joke. This is a crock. This is an embarrassment. And, these judges just don't know it because they're so out of touch. They're so clueless. And that's what was recognized there. And the Georgia judge, I think, thought he could get some bonus points by dismissing the perfect phone call charges. But he did it in such a way they could try to bring them back. But all that was doing was applying the law to the plain set of facts, which was that those charges had to be dismissed anyway. I mean, credit to actually following the law, unlike what he did in the disqualification motion. But it reveals that all of these charges are absurd charges that an honest judge would have long ago dismissed. Every single case, a honest judge would have dismissed every single one of these ludicrous charges.
Okay, well, I think that does it. We got Big Fani. We had the New York trial. But so do we?
Oh, I
do we
thought
have-
your transition was going to be a reference to Michelle Obama and Riley Gaines bringing suit against
No, but-
men participating in women's sports. I'm not
That-
saying
now
there's a
that I-
relationship there, by the way.
Now that I know what MOHAP means, so you have the MEHAP, made it happen on purpose, and the MEHOP, made it happen on purpose. And I thought the MOHAP was something along those lines. No, it's the. I saw Michelle Obama dancing on Ellen, and there was an amazing MacGyver sort of splicing it together, enhance, zoom in. What's that? It looks like there's a testicle in there. I'm not getting into that, but we're going to get into the Riley Gaines and others suing NCAA and a bunch of universities. I mean, look, everybody knows where I stand on this. I tweeted it out before the show, and I'll pull up some highlights from the class action lawsuit. It used to be that a man showing his genitals to non-consenting women was a crime. And now, if you dare object to it, you're the bigot who gets shamed and canceled. Everybody knows Riley Gaines' story. If you haven't seen her on Rogan.
It's another South Park reference, by the way, where they had the great wrestler character compete in women's sports, and all the women had to like not say anything as he's like throwing them aside. And I mean, it was such a parody. People like nothing like that would ever happen. Well, now it's standard in college sports.
That's what blows my mind is that we'll get into the allegations of the lawsuit, but you got a man, Leah Thomas, who at the time was having sexual relations with a woman who's a 6'4" man who had competed in men's sports. All of a sudden, willy-nilly decides he's a woman and he's going to compete in women's sports, fully intact, getting changed with women in the changing room. Louis C.K. got canceled for less than that. I don't think you should be whipping your junk out and playing with it, even if a person is consenting, because it's very weird. He got canceled for less than that. If he just said, I'm a woman, I get to diddle myself in front of you, well, then he's stunning and brave. So I listen. You have to listen to Riley Gaines on Joe Rogan. It was a great podcast, a genuinely great podcast. But I don't think she mentioned the lawsuit because I was surprised when I saw it. Class action, her and a bunch of others suing NCAA and a number of other institutions for Title IX violations. Robert, is this going to be the case that Ketanji Brown Jackson is going to have to call in the biologist to determine what is a woman?
There's two interesting aspects of the suit. One is that they are trying to apply Title IX to the NCAA because all the federally funded institutions subject to Title IX, which require equal opportunity and equal accommodation for both sexes in sport participation on college campuses, has delegated many of its tasks, duties, and authority to the NCAA. And so I always liked Brian Bosworth. Years ago when they had temporarily suspended him from a game from Oklahoma, who wore one of the great ever T-shirts. Maybe I'll put it up at 1776lawcenter.com as a little historical throwback. Well, maybe we come up with some cool historical T-shirts. That'd be fun. He had the NCAA National Communists Against Athletes, and that's who they are. They've gone full commie by having men participate in women's sports. Riley Gaines has spoken out. Megyn Kelly has spoken out on these topics in particular within the independent press and others. And it's just an embarrassment. Everybody can see what's going on, and it completely eviscerates the point and purpose of Title IX. Title IX was about making sure women could have equal opportunity, equal accommodations to sports, especially because, let's be honest, most people don't watch women's sports. I know it's not, always a popular thing to say, but true. There's not enough, men's sports, lead sports support themselves. Football, basketball, the big programs bring in tons of money. Not a lot of people go watch lacrosse and golf and some of these other things
But Robert, you say that, but if they continue with this UFC trend and they had males beating, cracking the skulls of females, I think people might tune into that more. So that's terrible, but it actually happens.
It's just come see perverts on display. And so that's really what's occurring. So they brought suit. To me, it's an obvious Title IX violation. I can't see how it's not. And so I'm, to be honest with you, I'm surprised it's taken this long for
Yep.
someone to sue.
I'll just to read paragraph 109. The change was made so that Thomas, this is Leah Thomas, a fully grown adult male with full male genitalia, would use the same locker rooms to be used by more than 300 female student athletes, depriving the female student athletes of sex-separated women's locker rooms, facilities, and bathrooms and restroom facilities where their right to bodily privacy could be protected, exposing the women to shock, humiliation, and embarrassment in violation of their constitutional rights. For those of you who didn't know what happened here, you got Leah Thomas exposing his junk to the women in the bathroom. Let me see here. What's this? He's approximately 6 feet tall, 4 inches. That's a tall man. Possessed full male genitalia.
And he kept losing in male swimming, so he became a woman instead.
It's obscene.
It's preposterous. And the Title IX's definition of sex is biological, and so consequently, I don't see how they get away with it. We'll see if the courts are clued in. Now, of course, Congress should have taken corrective action already. Now you have one of the other candidates being considered by Trump for VP, Governor Kristi Noem, who, let's say, she has kind of a Nikki Haley relationship pattern there in South Dakota with various, political people. I'll put it that way. And so. But one of the things she did is when corporate America told her don't sign South Dakota legislation to prohibit men from participating in women's sports, all the Chamber of Commerce had to do was blow that leaf across her desk for her not to sign it. And so would be another bad choice for VP. Not as horrendous as Tim Scott, but bad nevertheless. Also, you can tell she's a little on the slow side of the equation. Not Joe Biden slow, because that requires a whole record. But I think they should win if Title IX is enforced in the plain language it was written in.
It's a no-brainer, and I'll say this: the problem with this is that there are people out there like the Blair Whites who say, Blair White, transsexual. What I do with my body doesn't make me a woman. It's a work of art, so to speak. It's tattooing. It's like I'm crafting a body to look like something it wasn't born to look like. Buck Angel, transsexual. I'm not a man, but by the way, if women want to compete against men and they can do it, all more power to them. This is not about casting aspersions or judging other people's lifestyle. The reality is
preverts. There's
all
kinds of preverts.
Well, but there's a lot of what you would call transsexuals who also think this is an abomination. Leah Thomas is not a stunning and brave woman. He's a man who's a misogynist.
What's his name who became a woman? The famous one.
Caitlyn Jenner, who understands the biological differences, and it never becomes
it's ridiculous that you would have men. And he was actually a world famous male athlete.
So we'll see. It's a no-brainer, but maybe you get Ketanji Jackson Brown, who brings in the biologist that convinces her. No, Title IX was for people who identify as women.
Speaking of one area where Justice Jackson was on the right side, she and Justice Sotomayor and Justice Gorsuch dissented from a Supreme Court case interpreting the First Step law this week. The Supreme Court majority, it was a case of the institutionalist against the individualist. Gorsuch is consistent across the board. I suspect Jackson and Sotomayor will only be consistent when it applies to things like civil rights and criminal defense. But they were still on, in my view, the right side of the aisle, as the institutionalist majority. I predicted that that's where Kavanaugh and Barrett would end up. They would end up on the corporatist, institutionalist side of the equation, with Roberts on any issue that divided the two, and that's exactly where they ended up, forming the critical majority to gut Trump's First Step Act in a way that eviscerated the whole point and purpose of the law in part.
Robert, I was trying to think of which case you're talking about, and I don't think I haven't triggered it yet. So you might have to take this for a second and till my bells ring.
Trump passed the criminal justice reform law that was called the First Step Act. The goal was to reconsider our incarceration obsessed justice system since the middle of the 1980s. And in particular, he wanted to focus on people who were not violent, not gang members, not career criminals. He was like, these people get caught up in the system, subject to some mandatory minimum sentence somewhere that some politician thought would sell well, who didn't fit who that mandatory minimum was meant for. The goal was, don't give them a mandatory minimum sentence, give them an individualized sentence that fits their circumstances and their crime. And the goal was, but if there's someone that's a career criminal who's committed violence, who has an extensive record, that's not who has gang ties, the like. That's not who we're looking to provide an escape valve, or what was called the safety valve law. However, the government came in, and even though they admitted under the Biden administration, and this is the Biden administration that's for criminal defendant rights, which is a complete crock, is that because they've been eviscerating those rights all over the place, all across the country. They're trying to expand the criminal power of the state, not shrink it. And Trump was actually the one to try to shrink it, contrary to conventional interpretation of the two political parties. But basically, they came in and the Biden Justice Department said, really, these three provisions are not separate provisions. What is they are provisions that, okay, if you're someone that's not a career criminal, you don't have these big criminal points, you've never been convicted of a crime of violence, or you fit another category, then you're someone who can use the safety valve. Instead of interpreting that as or, in other words, you can, if you fit one of these three, then you can get the safety valve. The Justice Department came in and said you got to be all three or you don't get the safety valve, which dramatically shrank the benefit of the First Step Act to a very small percentage of criminal defendants. Well, what do you think the Supreme Court did? Even though the law is clearly intended to expand the safety valve, not shrink it, to shrink the imprisonment incarceration rate, not expand it, the institutionalist sided with the Biden Justice Department. And here's where, on criminal justice issues, both Thomas and Scalia, Scalia too, but Thomas and Alito have not been good. And they joined in with Kavanaugh and Barrett, who joined in with Roberts and Kagan, who's the institutionalist on the left. And they decided that basically the First Step Act, they were going to eviscerate it. That's what they did. They were that you had to have all of these clauses apply to you or you couldn't benefit from it. And I think Gorsuch explained that violates the common sense interpretation of the law. That violates what the Justice Department itself originally said the law meant. That violates what the actual preface, preamble, and the entire policy purpose behind the law is. And it violates a good common constitutional common sense in general in terms of how we interpret and apply the laws. And to her credit, as I earlier predicted, on criminal defense cases, Jackson will probably be on the individual rights side, and she was.
We'll see what happens with the January 6th case of the obstruction. We'll see where she is on that. But
yeah, okay. That would be one of those cases where the rubber hits the road. Will you have an expansive interpretation of criminal law there? She was good on the ballot case, so we'll see. I think it'll be more conventional criminal defense cases where she's better. Anything political, I wouldn't trust her on. But it was a promising sign that was there. It was disappointing that the institutionalists still dominate the court on these criminal justice issues.
Robert, did it start going downhill? I'm just looking at, there's a conflicting answer on this, but 1983, Corrections Corporation of America was officially founded and began operating private prisons. Did all of this start going downhill when prisons became privatized in America?
Well, that kind of relates to a hush hush that is currently up at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. An inside view of Netflix documentary, The Octopus Murders, about what they don't talk about. And one of those things that the Wackenhut company that is the subject of that hush hush helped brainstorm and engineer was private prisons that they monetized for their self-enrichment. And often what happens is Wackenhut was very creative at doing it too, by the way. The one person complained in the comments they didn't know who Omar Mateen is. The goal of some of the hush hushes is to give you a little link and let you research for yourself what that connection might be.
Omar Mateen, I remember he was the Pulse shooter, or the father of the Pulse shooter. That I think I remember.
No, he was the Pulse shooter, and he was a trained security guard under the psychological treatment and guidance of the Wackenhut Corporation.
Wackenhut, Robert, I'm looking this up. Wackenhut Corrections. It's called Wackenhut. The Wackenhut.
That's the dude's actual name. I thought it was
my God.
He came up with something. That's the dude's actual name. But you can watch the rest of the hush hush. But one of the things they came up with, incidents tended to happen that somehow justified or necessitated them getting a big fat government contract. And there's no question that the correlation between a bunch of privatized prisons and a massive increase in imprisonment is probably not a coincidence.
All right. Hold on. Let me bring back.
Which
what the
reminds me,
next-
I just briefly a little case. I'm suing the Silverdale Jail down in Chattanooga, Tennessee, my hometown, Hamilton County, and we filed our opposition to summary judgment on behalf of several people who were brutalized inside that jail. And by the way,
That's
my lead client was innocent; he was acquitted by the jury, but he got treated like he was. Well, here's what the county commission said. County commission said we didn't have any policy. The lawyers are like, you have to dismiss this case, judge. So I just quoted the county commissioners. And what did they say? The Hamilton County commissioners? They said it isn't the Silverdale. The Silverdale jail isn't the Silverdale Hotel. It's Silverdale hell. Well, now there's going to be hell to pay for saying that statement in the first place and deciding to treat people like they were subhuman, which is what happened to so many people in so many of these prisons and jails. Silverdale was one of those places that went back and forth between being a private prison and a public facility as well.
that's where one of the prisoners died, and they had the video where rats, cockroaches, all the other things in his cell. Is that
There's all
Silverdale?
kinds of horrific things. One of their favorite things to do was to take people who were suspected of being informants and putting them into the same jail cell with the people that believed that they had been informed on, or taking people that were part of or affiliated or associated with one gang and sticking them into a cell with a bunch of other gang members. Or in my client's case, taking a guy who was completely innocent and throwing him into the jail cell where their favorite thing to do was to beat people who came into the jail cell. They beat him within an inch of his life. They would sit there and watch it for a couple of minutes, like gladiator style enjoyment before they would pull him out. And now they're saying they should have no liability or responsibility or accountability for it. Hamilton County DA Womp and some other people down there need to get on the ball and fix this issue. But we'll see. But yeah, it's wherever private money got involved, the jail system and prison systems got worse, not better.
We're gonna lighten things up right now with this, Robert. It's 50 seconds of pure gold.
Okay. Now let's get a good look at you.
Robert, it keeps getting better. Like you think it's gotten as good as it's going to get. I want to know what all these movies are, but
I recognize like most of them.
look how good this is.
The one of them looked like CSI. Oh, MacGyver's in there.
MacGyver, CSI. That's
zoom in right here on this spot.
Enhance the detail and lock on and enlarge the Z-axis.
that. I don't know what.
Can you clear that up any?
That's
No.
MacGyver. I
Let's
don't know what that
enhance
is.
it.
This, I need to know what that is.
She's standing up.
So that's that. Hold on, let's consider. So that's a good light to lighten us up from the previous subject matter.
Well, speaking of people blocking people from things they don't want to see, social media blocking got clarity from the Supreme Court this week as well.
Well, so, I'll try to summarize the fact pattern. This is someone who got into politics, didn't start off in politics, had a private Facebook account, eventually got into, I forget what the position was, it doesn't really matter, eventually started confusing what was prior to that private, personal Facebook, not private, but personal Facebook page, infusing it with politics. Had some people who were not in love with their politics posting comments on their otherwise personal, but now fused with politics Facebook page.
It was one of these. There's a politician's one of these lockdown lovers during the pandemic, using his personal Facebook page to broadcast the importance of following this policy as the officialdom. A few folks shared their opinions of his ideas, and his response was to block them entirely from all posts, not just delete their post, but block them from being able to even see his Facebook page.
And the catch here, which they sort of tried to figure out the problem, it was his personal Facebook page before he gets elected into public office. I forget what his position is. Changes the description to explain that he's now private citizen and public official, and posts mixture of stuff on it. Blocks the guy who is making comments criticizing his lockdown stuff, and the guy sues, and it gets dismissed, or at least the blocking gets upheld in the lower and second court case level. Supreme Court says, no, you can't confuse when you're acting in your personal capacity versus professional capacity, political capacity. We don't know what that marriage is, but you don't get to You don't get to, basically confound those rules. Send it back and say, determine what posts he was blocked for or banned from, and whether or not someone is using it for personal, public, or personal and public use of what was otherwise a personal account. So they send it back down. What's going to happen? I mean, you got a lower court ruling where you know what they're thinking already. What are they going to do the second time around?
They did that in another case too. It was a unanimous decision, and what they really did is finally clarify: does blocking on social media, can that be a civil rights violation or a violation of federal constitutional law by a federal or state official? And they said yes. So that was the big one, because there were some people who were saying no, and so they clarified that yes, blocking can constitute a state action and can violate the constitutional rights of the individual to participate in a public forum. They said to determine whether or not a particular statement or page is a public forum, look to two things. Does the person have actual authority of the state? And secondly, do they state they're doing and making a particular statement or any statement in the name of the state? And they pointed out something significant here. They said if the person is blocked entirely and that page is ever used as a public forum, then the blocking violates the Constitution. So, for example, a particular statement that you delete somebody's comment from might be okay because that statement might not be within your actual authority as a state official. The page might not be a state-sanctioned page, and you might not have made the statement in the name of the state or your authority for the state. But blocking them entirely from your page is pretty much probably going to always be a constitutional violation unless you never use the page as a public forum. That was the last sentence of the opinion that there was very little commentary on. I was like, that's the big one. What they said, they kind of threw it in at the end. I was like, oh, okay, this means you're going to win every single one of these cases. So it means even if you were blocked in response to something that wasn't state action, if you're blocked from a page that's ever used as state action, then you got a claim. And so, I mean, that guy's going to lose. The defendant, he's going to lose on remand based on that key statement.
Someone had asked in Rumble, do you have to be a constituent? And that's a question I've been asked because I'm no longer a Canadian resident.
Oh, no, it's anyone. It's anyone.
I've been blocked by so many Canadian politicians.
It isn't protecting you; it's prohibiting them. So the state action is: did the official take state action? It doesn't matter whether you are American or where you are. If they are taking state action, then you can sue.
That's fantastic. I mean, it's a good thing. You want to have a personal Facebook account. Don't mix politics with your personal face. It's not hard. And then they get out of actually having a professional account.
And everybody out there, I mean, the federal ones, you don't get attorney's fees typically, but you can get an injunction, declaratory relief. Elizabeth Warren has banned a bunch of people. There's a bunch of politicians that have banned people. Everybody that's banned is pretty much going to win their suit now. Because almost all of them have used their site, that use that page for public statements at one time or another. And so, I mean, Senator Warren, I mean, she got away with libeling the Covington kids because they pretended that was state action. Okay, fine. And that was within her duties as a senator, which is really
immunity.
Yeah. I mean, somehow Trump talking about an election, oh, that's not within his duties as president. And the same courts, Elizabeth Warren talking about some kids in Covington, Kentucky. Oh, that's definitely within her senatorial duties. Shows you what, they're full of it 9 times out of 10. But this was a good decision, unanimous decision, provided clarity, reinforced constitutional remedy. And if you're a state official out there, you have to you can either never block or never use a particular social media account for any state action, or you will be successfully sued.
Fantastic. Robert, before I get too far behind, let me just see, the window here is here. Bada bing, bada boom. Okay, let's just read these real quick. Like Karen Tov says, had a great time last night with Grobert and Hunley. Last night, who grilled me over Canada, would do again. Ombudsman, Liberty Sentinel, send your neighbor to prison for wrong speak. Get $2,000 for taxpayer dollars in Washington. All right. I'll check that up afterwards. Washington State, send your neighbor to prison for wrong speak. Get $2,000. Okay, we did that. Frederer 59. I hope Barnes has the ear of one of the Trump's advisors. we know that some people are watching this
Oh
Sunday
yeah,
evening show.
but everybody should reach out completely, continuously, because it's just a message that has to be hammered for it to be heard.
Tag them on Twitter, message them on Facebook, whatever it is. Don't harass them and don't,
Right.
be respectful. Catch 22 in 1, 2, 3. What did you think of the Democrat operative attorney Norm Eisen bragging on X that Judge McAfee took our recommendation?
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't see that. Let me just go ahead.
Judge, it's embarrassing. I mean, Norm Eisen is a deep state advocate, long-standing deep state advocate, and it makes McAfee look like a crock. I mean, as you pointed out, he had to contradict himself throughout his entire opinion.
It was very irritating to read. Because I'm not trying to save my own predictions.
She committed perjury, but maybe not. But she committed perjury, but maybe not.
Legally improper, but no consequences. Her speech was legally improper. Let me just say, yeah, we got that. Okay. Didn't Fani perjure? Yes, we did. Okay. Snuggle struggle. She lied under oath at the least. She purposely misled the court, and he admonished her for this. That's the whole thing.
It's like
requires
bad committing perjury. Well, I'll pretend it wasn't really like perjury.
Then we got, if Trump, my eyes are so bad. If Trump doesn't pick Jesse Ventura for VP, I'm voting for RFK. Just Vivek. That's all he has to pick. Arkansas crime attorney, Little Rock, how you doing? Viva, did you get the boss hog reference? No. I'm going to screen grab that.
You don't know what the boss hog means? The Dukes of Hazzard. The great Dukes of Hazzard.
Well, I grew up on the Dukes of Hazzard, but
remember Boss Hogg is the mayor. He's the head guy in charge. Little Boss Hogg.
Not remembering
all of the white suits all the time.
Well, I didn't. Okay,
Roscoe is the cop.
Yes, of course, Robert. I know exactly. I'm going to have to go refresh my memory. What does Barnes think the point of Hochul deploying National Guard in the New York City subway is, Robert? Damage
to look
control?
like he's doing something, though it's not working.
The judge was clearly won over by Adam Abate's clothing argument. Yeah, right. Only if you had earplugs in. I'm a paid. Okay, we got that. Oh, geez. Boss Hog. No,
I was probably at home. He's probably in the office celebrating his genius. Do you know what that's like to go up against that level of lawyer? They win because of the corruption of the system, and they think they're geniuses.
Well, Fani
it was the old Poppy Bush joke. Born on third base and thinks he hit a triple. I used to say he was born on third base, ended up on second base, and he thought he hit a double. That's how slow the guy is. But the nature of the animal sometimes. But I think what the judiciary doesn't understand is how they're embarrassing themselves. I'm still hopeful that Roberts and Kavanaugh do recognize how this is embarrassing the judicial system.
Robert, let me close this down here. I got a window, too many windows open. Let's do the whistleblower. This is wild because
you got Epstein.
You got to I've watched the Octopus murder mystery.
Somebody in our live chat at vivabarneslaw.locals.com has a picture of the good Boss Hog.
Oh, hold on. I can do this. I can do this real quick. Like, hold on. I've realized I got to go back and watch. Oh my goodness.
That's Boss Hog. He was always scheming and scamming. Now imagine him having a really dumb little brother, and that was Sonny Perdue.
I want to go rewatch the Dukes of Hazzard. Robert, we were Epstein, the dude who got Epstein. The Octopus murder, or the Octopus conspiracy. Go watch it, people. How someone can slash their own wrists.
When they screwed up the documentary, there's little gems throughout. They couldn't tell the documentary in an honest way. So you have to just take the gems and find your own leads because they didn't have the cojones to tell the truth about what took place. But remember, there's 3 eternal truths. Number 1, Epstein didn't kill himself. And that's applicable to this Boeing whistleblower.
Well, hold on. I need you to spoil the Octopus. The other gems, I watched it.
There's many little gems scattered throughout, but they didn't have the cojones to really say what was. Instead, by the end of it, they're like, man, conspiracy theories are kind of dangerous, and maybe he just went crazy. And they wussed out at the end because there's no way Netflix was going to broadcast that if they went full fraud.
No,
if they went full Grobert, there's no way it was going to make it to Netflix.
He went full crazy and managed to slit his tendons and then use that hand to slit the other hand. Amazing
he
science.
Himself 10 times, and the dude had a blood fear. I mean, it's amazing. It was like Gary Webb shot himself twice in the head. Twice in the head.
Robert,
How do you shoot yourself twice in the head?
I've seen the fact check say it's possible. It's possible. So the Boeing whistleblower, we've seen a number of Boeing issues. You had the Alaskan Airlines, which was a Boeing plane where the door blew off mid-flight. You got the other recent one where there's apparently, I say allegedly because it'll get fact checked otherwise, engine fuel spilling out of the plane and has to turn around and land. There was another more recent one, but the bottom line is there's an employee of Boeing who's worked there for 30 plus years, retired now, comes out and blows the whistle. I don't know what the context of the lawsuit is in which he was doing the deposition, in the context of which he was suicided. This guy comes out and says everything about
he left the deposition, and did he like commit quote unquote suicide in the parking lot?
Robert,
I mean,
nothing.
I was like, the first thing I thought was, who did they hire as their counsel? Boeing. Is their counsel Hillary Clinton? I mean, it's like, wow. It was like the Clinton, the Clinton Death Curse series that I have multiple versions of at Hush Hush. I use the Haitian voodoo for reason. Go look up where the Clintons loved the honeymoon. But I mean, as soon as this story came out, I mean, to his credit, Robert Kennedy spoke out about it right away. Robert Kennedy's like, kind of interesting. And I was too. And the institutional media doesn't want to cover it, but it's already coming out that there's this guy, big whistleblower, testifying against them, goes out, suddenly found dead. They claim suicide. And there's more and more police report issues, family issues, friends saying he said, if I end up dead, I didn't kill myself, that he was at risk. And there's already issues about the crime scene, apparently. All of this sounds very, very suspicious.
Or if I may ask, like, Trump is not coming out on a number of issues, preemptively. Pennsylvania.
Yeah, instead of grabbing pussies, he's become one. Just to be blunt about it, I'm getting irritable, and more people are getting irritable.
But now, Robert, is the risk that he's not able to pay attention to this because he's distracted by the litigation?
No, I mean, he was made aware of the Amos Miller case, made aware of the Brooke Jackson case. He's made aware of many of these cases. Take Boeing. You know who Boeing implicates? The person he's right now considering for vice president. Tim Scott is neck deep in Boeing. The whole South Carolina political hierarchy, Nikki Haley, Lindsey Graham, they're all neck deep in Boeing. And Tim Scott especially. Tim Scott has written special legislation just for Boeing. So that my guess is that's why Trump is keeping his mouth. Trump right now seems scared to say things about the FBI, about the CIA, about the NSA, about the U.S. Agriculture Department, about the FDA, about the CDC, about any of these people. And it's glaring when every other day you can see Robert Kennedy talking about it and Trump not, day after day after day after day. And so it gets frustrating to some of us who want to see the best of Trump, not the worst of Trump 2020, the best of Trump. And that's a problem. But yeah, I mean, my guess is, there's a clear conflict of interest. I mean, you're considering a guy who is a clear Boeing-backed candidate for vice president, so you're probably not going to say anything about all these Boeing scandals that are blowing up all over the place.
I want people to understand this because I read the chat right now, and people are saying, I'm getting fed up with Barnes, endorsing Kennedy. I won't protect you, but I'll protect you.
People can be as critical as they want to be. The reality is not letting Trump know he's making a mistake with someone like Tim Scott, by not speaking out on things like the Boeing issue, by not speaking out on Amos Miller's case, by not speaking out on Brooke Jackson's case, by not speaking out about Julian Assange or Ed Snowden, by not speaking out about how he's going to change these institutions that have weaponized the government against him specifically. By doing so, it guarantees he's going to have a weak presidency if he's even able to make it through the presidency if he puts someone like Tim Scott on the ticket. And I got a lot of this criticism when I criticized Amy Coney Barrett. And now we see Barrett make a key vote on a bunch of cases that hurt the populist and individual rights constitutional cause. The cases she was right on were cases any of the justices that he could have nominated would have been right on. She was a decisive vote to not take up the 2020 election. Some of us were critical of Bill Barr. Some of us were critical of him picking Mike Pence. Some of us were critical of him picking Mike Pompeo. You don't have to take my word for Trump appointing some of the worst people ever. Just listen to Trump. He talks about how terrible all these nominees were. Who nominated him? He did. And so unless people get his attention, he will repeat these mistakes. It's clearly not a strong point. And right now he's repeating a bunch of them. But it doesn't look good. In other words, the only risk for Trump is that a bunch of his voters vote for Robert Kennedy instead. That's in Trump's control. Trump decides that. Trump can decide to keep those voters by endorsing the issues that is leading them to support Robert Kennedy. That's the simple math. It's the simplest electoral math in the history of politics. The fact he's not doing it is on Trump, not on me for pointing it out.
And Cocteau, I'll say it, says not speaking out about January 6th prisoners. It's about, you don't only criticize people you hate. Sometimes you criticize people you love because you want to make them better. And I'm not saying that to be melodramatic.
Exactly.
So my face looks horrible, Robert. I turned up the because I have no lighting anymore. I've turned up the light on my computer. Whatever, you're gonna live with this ugly mug. The dude didn't kill himself. I'll say that right up front. He doesn't
look like that way to me.
He doesn't work for the company for 30 some odd years. He was retired. So he's living off a pension. Maybe he thinks they're going to cut the pension. You don't live to tell your story. Start telling your story and then take your own life. You just don't do it. So this is a whack, and it looks exactly like what it looks like. Boeing, Robert. You got what's her face? Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, and their stuff is not doing well. Why is their stuff not doing well?
There's been a lot of issues. And people like Matt Stoller, some other people have pointed out a lot of the issues with Boeing over the years. I mean, a lot of people that are in the know have, Richard Barris, other people have pointed out problems with Boeing for a while now, been covered up by a corrupt government regulators and administrators, and now being exposed because their problems are planes not taking off, planes having to land suddenly,
blowing their freaking doors off mid-flight. But you get a good view of the
problem
ocean.
after problem after problem after problem. And the thing is, there's key high-ranking members, but Boeing is a integral element of the American deep state. I mean, people should not underestimate that at all. An essential component of the American deep state. And they have embedded themselves within high-ranking aspects of both the Republican and the Democratic Party. And this whistleblower was part of exposing that. He ends up dead in a parking lot after they get wind of what he's going to testify to. I'm sorry, that's not a coincidence. And the chances are he got Epsteined.
Well, here, let me just distract one more time. We'll go with the Biltong. King of Biltong. Good afternoon from Anton's Meat and Eat. Free shipping using code Viva on BiltongUSA.com. AntonUSA.com. Biltong. It's wet. It's beautiful wet beef jerky. It's amazing. It's there. Viva didn't Village Crazy Lady talk about Tim Scott? I'm fairly certain she did. I'd have to go back and watch it. I digest a lot of information on a daily basis. Let me see if I can get this. Please, at Barnes, provide us the text of an actual letter we can write and mail to President Ocean Palm and Marla. Okay.
Well, it's up in the Barnes brief about the problems with Tim Scott, the long history of problems with Tim Scott, why he's a very problematic nominee for Trump. Not so much from an electoral perspective, but from the success of a Trump second term and, quite frankly, Trump's physical well-being. He needs to pick a vice president that the people that oppose him are as afraid of as they are afraid of him. If he picks anyone else, they'll do more damage than Pence did, because he'll be at risk of what that book about President John Kennedy is about.
All right, Robert. What do we move on to now? Okay, sorry, you go for it. I was going to.
Well, I was going to say on the white pill side of the equation, we got a great ruling this week on the law about the law concerning disclosure of beneficial interest. You were joking earlier about the law requiring you tell the government every time you give somebody $600. There might be implications even for that law, but definitely, this law was a pernicious law with massive surveillance capabilities that a conscientious federal court struck down as unconstitutional.
You're going to have to do it.
Sure.
What
So,
happened, Robert?
most people didn't even know this law existed.
I didn't even know. You sent me my homework, and I think I missed this entirely.
So this was buried in the Defense Department bill. Kind of not surprising it was inside the Defense Department bill. The Corporate Transparency Act, which usually does it, which they should call it the Government Surveillance Act, because what it required is that if you are part of any kind of business entity of any kind that's recognized by any form of government. This is trust. This is nonprofit. This is profit. This is small business, big business. Doesn't matter. You have to disclose to FinCEN, the criminal enforcement wing of the Department of Treasury, with the Infernal Revenue Service, along with them. That's what, but FinCEN is supposedly about money laundering and whatnot. That isn't where that law has been applied typically. If it was actually applied under FinCEN, Biden and his whole family would have been in prison 20 years ago. But they were requiring everybody, frankly, in the world, if you read the statute to a degree, to disclose who all of your shareholders are, who all your investors are, who all your beneficial interests are. You got to trust that you want to give something to this family member or that family member. Got to disclose it now to the FinCEN. I mean, it was incredible invasive. Basically, you wouldn't be able to form any business that provided any kind of legal protection or licensed operation without disclosing all the most intimate details of that business's organizational and investment and financial beneficial structure, disclosing all of that to the governmental agency that has the power to wreck your life and wreck your business. And so the National Small Business Union brought suit against Secretary Yellen. The main enforcer of this is Secretary of Treasury. And they pointed out that there's no constitutional provision for this. This is the federal government getting way out over its skis. They're like, the law itself, unlike some past laws, doesn't say anything about tying it to foreign transactions, doesn't say anything about tying it to taxable activities, doesn't say anything about tying it to interstate commerce. And usually that's how they get away with it. They pretend it's about national security. They pretend it's about interstate commerce. They pretend it's about making sure we can tax appropriately. And the court pointed this out. They said the Constitution is a constitution of enumerated powers, not expanded powers, enumerated powers. It means you only have the powers you're expressly and explicitly given. And if they aren't given to you, they are reserved either to the states or to the people. That last part often be forgot by courts included, as well as scholars and politicians these days. And the court said, there's nothing about this that's national security or foreign affairs. So just because it could maybe possibly someday impact national security or foreign affairs doesn't allow you to regulate every single thing in the world. And there's nothing in here that requires it have any of these entities have anything to do with interstate commerce. What triggers the law is that you have registered a entity of any kind with any government anywhere in the world. That's it. You don't have to engage in any commerce for the law's criminal enforcement to apply to you unless you rat out everybody that could financially benefit or has invested in your business. Imagine the intel they would get. Oh, this is who's forming this business. Oh, that's who's forming this group. Oh, that's who's doing this. Oh, that's who's economically involved. It's a mass surveillance operation with the potential confiscatory and punitive power of the state behind it. And point out there's nothing to do, like maybe somewhere along the way there's a taxable transaction, but nothing in the law concerns taxable transactions. So to this district court's credit, say this is patently unconstitutional. So not only does it strike down a horrendous law, but also reinforces and reinvigorates the importance of the enumerated right limitation on federal governmental authority, which also, by the way, should apply to states under their own state constitutions as well. They're kind of forgetting that up at the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, where Secretary Redding has declared himself the Pope of Food. for the entire country. Also, not authority enumerated by the Pennsylvania Constitution, which equally reserves its rights to the people. This is true in many of the state constitutions, so it may have analogous provisions applicable in multiple contexts. So it's an extraordinary case, great decision, striking down a terrible law that reinvigorates a constitutional doctrine that hopefully gets affirmed and upheld on appeal, that gives additional grounds to challenge bad laws across the board.
Robert, I'm going to bring this up. It might irritate you, but I'm doing it anyhow. And I'm going to read it out loud, and I'm going to say what I think, and then you're going to say what you think. Barnes is praying for a Tim Scott VP so he convince people to vote for RFK Jr. Paul Rose 76. Paul, I think I've seen your name before, so I want to pick on you. I will. We're both blocked by Scott Adams, that little coward pussy, but it doesn't matter. He blocked us. He doesn't remember. Mind reading is the number one trait of loser thinking. You know exactly what Barnes is thinking. Hold on a second, Barnes. I'm going to do it. If anybody out there thinks Barnes is going for RFK Jr. As a presidential winner, you might be the first time watching this show. Barnes is on record saying he's got no chance of winning. He's there to keep Trump in check. So there's that. I know that you like RFK as a person. You represent him as a client, and that's fine. So mind reading and bad mind reading at that.
Well, and the thing is that you can second guess my motives all you want. That doesn't change the objective accuracy of the analysis, right? I mean, all of this was thrown at when we questioned Lynn Wood, got those accusations. Questioned what Sidney Powell was doing on the elections, got those accusations. Questioned what Trump was doing on the lockdown. What questioned when he supported it early on. Questioned what Trump was doing with Amy Coney Barrett. Questioned what Trump was doing on pushing the vaccine. Got a lot of those same criticisms. So on all of those categories, I understand that. Now I would, if you want to question motivations, I've been one of Trump's biggest defenders going back 7-8 years, even when it was unpopular to do so. But question the motives all you want. Emma, is the objective analysis right? Is Tim Scott a good or bad decision? Does Tim Scott increase or reduce the risk that he gets Kennedy'd, that he gets Epstein'd? That just do that analysis. You can say, oh, I hate Barnes, don't like Barnes, don't trust Barnes. Fine, do all that. Look at the objective accuracy of the analysis. Is it a good or bad idea for Trump to put Tim Scott on the ticket? I assert that there's very few people that can look at that objectively and say it's a good idea.
I love you, Barnes. I love that I don't have to feel nervous about bringing up stuff that takes a poke at you. Boeing has also intensified the push for DEI garbage. And there's that. All right. There was one other thing I wanted to bring up, Robert. I forget what it was now. Doesn't matter. Okay. What do we have left? And we need to go over to locals.
So we've got the couple of cases. Got the Scientology versus Leah Remini. We got Fox being sued over the war reporter death. We got San Fran being sued for being a shithole. We got a little bit of update on Tyson Foods and Amos Miller as well. So some of those we can save for the after party at vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
We got to do the one where we have the biggest crowd. I looked. The lighting
either Scientology or San Fran shithole.
No, we're doing Amos Miller, Robert. So you filed your appellate brief for the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, Pennsylvania PDA. That's right. You are appealing the injunction that ratified the seizure and destruction of Amos Miller's farm goods, produced materials, not just for customers, but for his own consumption, and not just for his own consumption, for the otherwise wasting it for the animals to eat. You've challenged all of this, and I say you've been dropping bombs, and it's an amazing thing. Give the 30-second update for those who don't know what's going on with Amos Miller.
Yeah, so so we filed our notice of appeal and challenge and our motion to modify the injunction that was issued against him that currently prohibits him from marketing and selling raw milk. There's a bunch of other products available, including discounts on meat and other things that are available at AmosMillerOrganicFarm.com. For those that want to share information or learn information about the case, the 1776lawcenter.com has the court documents, the basic story, links to interviews and public reports about the case as well. We also filed the Pope Redding there, the Secretary of Agriculture in Pennsylvania, has ordered the complete destruction of a bunch of his food that they unlawfully detained after they illegally searched. And we have filed a petition in court challenging that order of destruction, and pointed out that the order of destruction just patently and plainly violates this Pennsylvania's own state law, the limitations on the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, the cases established under the Pennsylvania Constitution by the Pennsylvania courts, as well as the constitutional rights of Amos Miller and his members. And so we have challenged that order of destruction as well, because what they did is the law says you can only order food destroyed if 3 preconditions are met in Pennsylvania. The food is unfit for human consumption and cannot be made amenable for human consumption. Second, it has no potential animal use. And third, it has no other potential beneficial use. And of note, this only applies in the first place to food that's for commercial sale. It can never apply to personal or familial use. Yet the order of destruction orders food destroyed there's nothing in the order of destruction that says the food is unfit for human consumption. Nothing that says it couldn't be made amenable for food for human consumption. And the reason for that is their own test came back and cleared almost all the food. Only a small portion of the food had any questions with it. And we proved at the hearing, there was no issues with that either. But even food their own testing said was completely safe, they've ordered destroyed. Not only that, they've ordered that it not be made available to his own animals. Not only that, they've ordered that it not be made available to his own family or himself. A farmer cannot feed his own family his own food, according to Pope Redding of the Secretary of Agriculture. So we have challenged that order with the Pennsylvania courts as well. Next up is a major federal civil rights claim that we're coordinating with food freedom lawyers all across the country to bring, and that's going to be the next stage. So we have multiple pronged approach. There's going to be additional fundraisers for Amos Miller to keep him economically afloat while this state assault continues against him unabated. Where people may think it how much it works. The Pennsylvania legislature is asleep at the wheel. A lot of politicians in Doug Mastriano is another wuss. Wouldn't even take a phone call to discuss the case. I'm sorry. I'm done wasting my time defending that guy. But smart Pennsylvania politician would realize that this issue is an issue that a lot of people in Pennsylvania are concerned about and start doing something with. But however doubt you may have about your ability to influence the court of public opinion, note that Politico, of all places, wrote an article that was mostly for raw milk in referencing the Amos Miller case, that the state Pennsylvania is trying to effectively prohibit it by putting it under limited regulations that restrict 95% of raw milk products from ever being marketed or sold. So we are starting to make gains in the court of public opinion. It helped that Robert Kennedy voiced support for the case very loud. As soon as he did, all of a sudden, the institutional media in Pennsylvania started asking for interviews, started wanting to see the other side. There's going to be some very prominent people that are going to be covering this story very soon. So everybody out there is making a positive difference by sharing the link, sharing the story, support at 1776 Law Center, support at Amos Miller Organic Farm, support in the court of public opinion. This was a case they thought they could get away with, stripping us of all of our rights to food freedom and bodily autonomy. Note what the Riley Gaines case talks about, the bodily privacy and bodily autonomy. By the way, that has constitutional ramifications for all these cases if that right is recognized in that case. But this impacts everybody, and everybody's making a difference. So appreciate what everybody's doing out there. Amos Miller's still in good spirits. I mean, what he's most worried about is all the other Amish farmers who worked with him for their products to be distributed that are now under major economic stress. That shows you who he is. That's still his priority. He just wants to farm and get food safely to people that need it, and be able to have his family continue the farming tradition that he is a 5th generation Amish farmer in Lancaster County. So it's an important issue for everybody. It's especially important for him and the Amish. There's a local mayor political figure that's speaking out for Amos Miller, that's registering voters along with Scott Pressler over what? He's seeing record level of interest from the Amish and the Amish community because of the Amos Miller case, as he himself is independently validated and verified. So this is making a real difference. And I do hope that for all those upset at me for questioning aspects of what President Trump's decision making, that he get involved in this case. Pennsylvania's a close state. This is a no-brainer. Side with the Amish, side with Amos Miller, side with food freedom, side with America. It's good for him. It's good for everybody.
Robert, the risk in your appeal is that like a number of the issues relate to personal use, animal use, etc. And then the two big ones, which are the two big ones, is selling it and operating without PDA approval.
Yep.
Is the risk not that they can give you the majority of what you're asking for, but not the two most important elements of what you're asking?
Well, but the main thing we're asking for is to be able to sell it out of state. So if they decide that merely that you have to have a permission from the government before you can sell something, even when that permission is mostly a prohibition on 95% of what you sell. And by the way, they lied, as I expected and suspected they did, that, we've been going through the process of requesting various permit forms and other forms in a more indirect manner, not so they don't know it's Amos Miller. And a lot of the information that's in there contradicts what the lawyer for the Attorney General's office and the Pennsylvania Department officials officially told the court, by the way. Oh, no, this won't prohibit this. Oh, no, this won't restrict that. Oh, no, you don't waive any rights by doing this. They were lying as usual. The PDA is saying something in public or in court, they're usually lying. That's the only thing you can rely upon when it comes to the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office or the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. And there's more evidence of it. But the main thing we're seeking in the modification of the injunction is to allow him to distribute it outside of the state of Pennsylvania. That's where 95% of his customers are. And I've got a new idea. There's the Underground Railroad. There was the prohibition bars, the speakeasies. I think I'm going to open up speakeasies all across America where the speakeasies are. Yeah, I'm going to sell Amos Miller's milk. You'll sneak in through a phone booth, sneak in the back, and there'll be a couple of Amish there when you get in and be like, oh, wow, I finally get to get the real good stuff. Because that's what's becoming. Imagine you have to smuggle Amish milk in Biden's America.
Well, all that I know that you made me want to try unpasteurized, whatever they call it, unpasteurized milk. I've never had it in my life. I had
it's the best
kefir.
ever. It's the best. I represented the founders of the Altadena dairy operation. They got wiped out by California years ago over this issue. Now California is the leader, by the way, in this production because there was such public outrage in the state that required it, and now everybody loves it. Once you drink it, you'll understand its real benefits. They're treating it like cocaine, and it's like when I drank it, people like Barnes has so much energy. What is he? He's on cocaine. It's like, no, it's Amos Miller's milk, but it's so refreshing and invigorating. It's extraordinary. It'll do a lot more for you than a glass of whiskey during the Prohibition. That's for sure.
All right, we're going to move over to locals now, but I want to read one last chat. Someone said they're losing faith in Vivek as well. Vivek and Trump, if you're listening, you better be listening. Losing faith
Vivek correctly spoke out about them going after the beef maker in New York based on bogus climate change issues. Amos Miller is a simpler case, an easier case, and it's in a swing state that is this close to determining to right now in terms of the election. It is a no-brainer. It is a no-brainer. I mean, you're siding with the Amish. I mean, I've been astounded by how. I mean, the only people that have less courage and less competence than the Georgia political hierarchy is the Pennsylvania Republican political hierarchy.
No, but Robert, I think it's because nobody really thinks anybody cares about it. That's the issue.
And they don't understand how significant this is. Millions of Americans care about this issue. There's millions of Americans that will vote solely on this issue. Like all the people that are critical of me for pointing out that Trump is missing big opportunities and pointing out that Kennedy may be the one to profit from that, don't understand that the issue is in Trump's control. There's million. I mean, to give an example, so that's food freedom. Millions of Americans care only about this issue. There's millions of this can be the decisive margin in a close state, just by itself. Particularly in Pennsylvania, where almost half of dairy farmers have been wiped out by the PDA under this so-called Secretary of Agriculture, the Pope of Food of Pennsylvania. He is crushing small independent dairy farmers in that state with the way he governs and regulates and restricts. He is wiping them out. And if what they're doing to Amos goes through, the Amish themselves will be at extraordinary risk. One of the greatest communities and traditions of independent food making in the history of this country. But to give an example, take the vaccine issue that people don't understand the consequence of. The number of Americans, Richard Barris, as People's Pundit, is going to be polling on this, I think, in the near future. But the number of Americans who know somebody who's either been discriminated against because of the vaccine, been disabled or suffered an injury because of the vaccine, or died because of the vaccine. The number of people who know someone in those categories has gone from low single digits in the past to it's getting close to half of the country. And so when Trump says, go vaccine, look at me, I did it, people don't understand how enraged that group of voters gets. I hear from them because I represent many of them. I hear from them because I'm connected to that community. So you can think whatever you want to think about Bobby Kennedy. You can think whatever you want to think about me. Do understand that constantly attacking or supporting the vaccine is attacking the people who've suffered from it. It's like attacking Social Security. You may think you're right in principle. You can say bye-bye to your electoral future. And the same is true in food freedom. People don't want corporatized food, industrialized food, monopolized food. And they do want access to the food created by the independent small farmer. No better version of it than Amos Miller's. This is a no-brainer to embrace it, no-brainer to support it. And it just shows how out of touch and clueless our political class is. It's the same political class that thought supporting money for Ukraine, billions of dollars, was going to be popular. That's how out of touch these people are. It's like Ben Shapiro saying everybody who's 80 should be required to work. It's a degree of disconnect that you can't even imagine. And some of the people in the name of supporting Trump are hurting Trump by not listening on these issues and not encouraging him to reconsider his stance. I mean, remember, Trump was an original vaccine skeptic. Trump in 2016 was going to put Robert Kennedy on a commission to investigate vaccines. And then Bill Gates bragged about how he rolled Trump. Trump should pay Bill Gates back what he deserves and pay Pfizer back, which deliberately withheld the vaccine until after the election just to hurt Trump. That's who he's protecting. People who've spent all this time screwing him. So that's why these issues matter. But, hopefully somebody in Pennsylvania will wake up and realize that they have one of the great issues right in their backyard that the people of the state will rally around them to support. People want their own choice. They did a recent, where was it? I think it was Texas. They put it on the like a kind of referendum, public referendum. Do you think you should decide what goes into your body, or do you think the government, or your employer? What do you think the answer was? It was 90-10. I decide, not some low IQ lord ass at the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. This is a no-brainer. Get on it, everybody. Join the food freedom movement because it's the American movement.
So what you're saying is that Trump should threaten a bloodbath on Pfizer. Sorry, that's too loud. I wrote to my mayor in Nebraska about Amos Miller, and he refused to bring this up. I told him I would no longer vote for him. Outdoor Noble says, Viva, still have your shirt. VP, Alex Jones for self-preservation. Mark Elias is an affront to any judicial system. I missed any talk on Lord Magistrate Judge Willis, but expect suits for disbarment. Oh, they got those. Okay, so here's what we're doing now. Getting text messages. Our time. Okay. Let me do this. And stop screen. Bring it up here. We're taking the party over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. I'm turning my phone off now. It's getting annoying. We're turning the party over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Come on over to Locals. Typos in there. We've done something good, Robert. What are you doing this week?
So this week is, I'm actually going to be meeting with some lawyers about the election issue. There may be some progress on that. One thing 1776 Law Center is going to support this spring and summer is election cases to make sure we actually have a free and fair election in 2024, unlike 2020. I think, two of the best reasons to support Trump are that the 2020 was stolen from him, and to give him the election he was entitled to then, and to send a message to this lawfare that lawfare must be punished, and there's probably no better way to punish it than a vote for Trump. And so but some of the election issues I'll be discussing. But otherwise, this is March Madness. This is the greatest week of sports betting and sports.
I had no idea.
I've been doing this since I was knee high to a grasshopper. I'll be picking brackets. I'll be sharing that with people at Viva Law.locals.com and at sportspicks.locals.com. We'll probably do a bracket. Everybody can enter it, and the free one will get a lifetime membership to Sports Picks and some other things. But I usually always try to take off this Thursday through Sunday in order to enjoy March Madness. It's one of my favorite times of year. A lot of hardcore sports fans really enjoy it. You're screaming with every game. You got like 4 games on. You're screaming to shoot, not shoot, hit it, make it. Even if the score's like, if you have a little bit of money in the game, then you care even if the margin's 26 points. You're screaming, shoot, don't shoot, don't shoot, because maybe the total is, or the line is 25.5. So it's a lot of fun. The madness is true mayhem. Little Cinderellas come out of nowhere to hit big shots to go to take a run. Little nuns like Loyola Chicago get to go all the way to the Final Four when they're 88 years old for their program to first make it there. So I've always enjoyed March Madness. My favorite time, one of my favorite times of year, and I always try to take off during it. There's a few years that hasn't worked. But I'm hoping that's what I'll be absorbed doing Thursday through Sunday. Well, up until our Sunday show.
Well, and I'll share this. This is a Lectern guy who posted this on Twitter, and it says, my seedy hotel nightstand setup is the same as my setup at Four Seasons, and it's beautiful. And I may or may not be, and by say that, I'm hanging out with Lectern guy tomorrow. So this is part and parcel of the trip today. You might see some fun times with Viva and Lectern guy tomorrow. I won't spoil it, but locals, you're going to get the sneak peek and some behind-the-scenes footage of Viva. And
Viva shoots a bazooka.
We'll see. I don't know what's going to happen. Might be more tame than that. All right, what we are doing right now, people, I'm giving everybody the link. I'll be live throughout the week. Obviously, I'm on the road. It's going to be this crappy setup, but whatever. Substance over form. Link to locals for the after party. Typo included. And now I understand why people are saying, Viva, why are you drinking Scottish gin on St. Patty's Day weekend?
Oh, yeah, happy St. Patty's Day, everybody.
Yeah, happy St. Patty's. Here we got a green, using your best Rod Sterling impression. Imagine if you had a 6-3 Democrat appointed SCOTUS. Where would we be?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, Trump, all those people that said no to Trump. The best thing that Trump has that he can recreate, as long as he doesn't pick the wrong vice president, is peace abroad, prosperity at home. Joe Biden gave you poverty at home and war abroad. He's got a simple thing. But in my only argument is don't lose or leak votes that you don't need to lose or leak by not just exposing what Pfizer did. He did a beautiful contract, said deliver a safe, effective
and he got fucking lied to
for the prevention of COVID-19. What Pfizer delivered was dangerous, ineffective, not even a vaccine, and didn't prevent COVID-19. And right now, the Biden Justice Department is intervening in the Brooke Jackson case, demanding dismissal of the case.
To kill it.
And their sole grounds, they didn't have any new evidence, any new facts, any new policy. They said the Biden administration is publicly committed to this vaccine. So consequently, we cannot allow any lawsuit that exposes how ineffective it is, exposes how dangerous it is, exposes how it is not a vaccine, exposes how they lied to President Trump and stole billions of dollars from the American people precisely because the Biden administration wants the world to believe in this vaccine. An unprecedented argument for the grounds to dismiss a key TAM action. And they're just hoping the judge doesn't have the courage to stand up to the rogue, conflict of interest impacted Justice Department under this president. And I think it's a great issue. Bobby Kennedy spoke out about it. It's a great issue for President Trump to speak out about it. This is about the Biden administration not honoring the contract he drafted on behalf of his corrupt alignment with the Pfizer Corporation. Embrace Brooke Jackson, embrace the American people, expose this fraud, and do it now.
All right. I had a thought. I forgot it now. It doesn't matter. Get on over to Locals, people. We're ending on Rumble, and we're going to have our after party. And stay tuned. It'll be awesome. All right. Thank you all. Happy St. Patty's Day. I didn't even know when it was. I don't know what month it is anymore, Robert. Everything feels the same in Florida. 12 months of summer a year. It gets disorienting. Ending on...
We'll have a few bonus cases. We'll have the Scientology case with Leah Remini. We got the suit against San Fran for being a shithole. We got Fox being sued for setting up a war reporter to get killed in Ukraine.
That's not funny.
And we got a little update on Tyson Foods.
Yeah, they were trending.
Folks, sounds a lot like the Tyson that was a Nazi corporation in Germany.
They were trending on Twitter, Robert. Okay, we are ending on Rumble, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Let me see. Have we... Yes, okay. We picked up 19 new viewers there. Ending on Rumble. I'll be live all week. Stay tuned. Done and done. Thank you all for being here. Enjoy the weekend. Locals, here we comes. Bada bing, bada boom. All right. Let me see what we got here. We're going to go through the $5 or more tips. Let me go get them, and we'll do this, and then you'll do our topics. Tips. My goodness, my eyes are getting terrible. Denise Ann, happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. This is why I'm celebrating. Oh, that's a cheat. We got a screen grab with an on St. Patrick's Day. I wear green today, not because I want to get drunk, but because I celebrate St. Patrick's St. Patrick captured as a slave at 15. St. Patrick converted to Christianity. He and his followers brought the gospel back from Ireland to England and the rest of Europe when Christianity was dying. St. Patrick saved civilization because he gave people hope in Christ, and as green shows new life, so we have new life, and so I wear green. I never knew that in my entire life. So thank you,
It's
Denise.
nice in Chicago. They used to have to dye the rivers green for St. Patty's Day, but now they're naturally green.
Now it happens on its own. Julie O, $20 says, why isn't Tyson considered a monopoly at this point? They control so much more than any corporation should, and it's slowly killing people.
Yeah, I know people want me to criticize Bobby Kennedy, but one of our other alliances is he was one of the leaders in suing Tyson Foods. And anyone who sues Tyson Foods is automatically given a blessing. But yeah, it was, the fact that they were exposed, and great work by James and other people on this. That Tyson Foods is neck deep in the diversity, equity, and inclusion. Tyson Foods is apparently giving people bonuses to discriminate. But what they got outed for is they're firing longtime employees, loyal, hardworking, ordinary working class Americans in places like Iowa, and places like Kentucky, places like Tennessee, and places like Oklahoma. And now they want to hire illegal immigrants instead. That's who these people are. They're the bottom of the barrel. Robert. And Sarah Huckabee Sanders. If you want to prove you're worth something, that you're not just a talking piece, that you can live up to the populist reputation you have the potential to earn, take on Tyson Foods right there in Arkansas. Huey Long was the real deal. You want to know how we know? Because he took on Standard Oil and John Rockefeller right in Louisiana. It's time. Tyson Foods is a corrupt criminal organization, in my opinion. Going back, they've been hiring illegals for years. But now they just want to do it officially and legal. Just as they fired people for having religious objections to the vaccine. The way they've handled many of their lawsuits left me permanently swearing a blood oath against them forever. Other people believe in, forgiveness and whatnot. Never forgive, never forget, hold the line. That's East Tennessee. And that's definitely against Tyson Foods. But it turns out they're also corrupt in diversity, equity, inclusion, giving bonuses for discriminating against people. That's the bottom of the barrel of this company. And so they should continually be exposed. And it's another, and as the chatter points out, they have a near monopoly on large parts of our food supply. We went from 90% of food provided directly from farm to table in the founding of this country to now 98% of food coming from some form of corporate controlled, industrialized, monopolized organization. Because how do I say monopolized? 80 to 90% of the food and pork and chicken and beef and a wide range of products controlled by a small number of companies. It turns out 90% of our cheese has Pfizer crap in it. You know what's Pfizer-free cheese? AmosMillerOrganicFarm.com. There you can get some Pfizer-free cheese. This is a broader concern, and the chatter is absolutely right about who and what Tyson Foods is.
We've got hyperdynamic. In a recent speech, Trump said words to the effect that his policies would help farmers so they could buy bigger tractors. Trump has a serious corporatism problem.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, Trump's great instincts are his salesmanship and marketing. He's not an engineer. He's not an architect. So that's always been a limitation. And on the sales side, he comes from working class urban New York. So there's certain issues he really gets. He gets immigration. He gets crime. He has great instincts on foreign policy, on trade and war. He doesn't get the problem of industrialized food. He doesn't get the problem of industrialized medicine. I mean, the drug companies, as he himself mentioned, made political war against them throughout his entire term. He was trying to reduce drug costs in certain contexts, trying to do other things with drug companies to reform their behavior. So he knows this, and yet now part of it is one of his close buddies is Johnson & Johnson. You know, that's not a good thing, to be blunt about it. And that's part of the reason why he kept vouching. Johnson & Johnson was one of the makers of the COVID vaccine. It's not good for Trump to have that affiliation. He didn't realize it was embarrassing until he introduced him at a rally and the crowd booed. And then he realized, oh, hold on a second. He was starting to get, but it's a weakness. He doesn't. And then right now he thinks all the problems of the lawfare are individual to him. He doesn't understand. These are institutional problems. They go back to then. This is about a deep state that is corrosively corrupt, that is crushing and killing our constitutional republic. And that requires institutional reform. I think a lot further than what Robert Kennedy's talking about doing. But Trump's not describing any of it in any detail. He says, I'm going to destroy the deep state. Great. How? By putting Tim Scott as your VP? The deep state's favorite senator? Don't think so.
Okay, we got I agree with Barnes. The Amos Miller case illustrates, this was Beavis Wallace. I agree with Barnes. The case illustrates we the people must stay educated on who we vote for in our own local federal elections. This is only the way we keep our freedom.
By the way, we may have a solution on that front. A couple of members of, as always, this here above average board at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Even the trolls are above average, and a few of them have been active tonight. We may have an AI solution to that, a true independent, objective AI that would allow you to find out what you need about candidates at every level of office, so you can figure out who's good, who's not, who's reliable, and who's not, who's trustworthy or not. So a lot of good ideas coming from other members of our board who are looking at some of those business ideas.
You could have the tech solution, but it requires somebody to take the time to ask the question, which most people are not going to do.
Too often are not happening. There's no doubt about that.
Given United Airlines' ridiculous DEI policies for pilots and maintenance workers are already showing their detrimental impact, and it is entirely predictable that customers will die as a result, what proactive legal remedies can United customers and mileage holders take to, at a minimum, put them in an excellent position for a future lawsuit after an inevitable, fatal incident occurs? I want the United execs in the hot seat immediately, says John Ritchie.
Well, I represent a bunch of United folks suing United over the vaccine mandates. And they're right that they've been trying to keep a lid on this. The pilots that are suffering I run into pilots that tell me that they know of other pilots it's happened to. So and Edward Dowd keeps documenting it. But this is stuff that Trump is in complete denial of. People don't understand or don't recognize where some of our agitation or my agitation is coming from. Trump has been told these things and refuses to listen to them. But this is accumulating out there. Edward Dowd has detailed the shocking rise in disability claims that directly correlate to the vaccine, so-called vaccine. I mean, this drug is going to disable and kill more people than any drug in history. Definitely even more than any so-called illegal drug in history. And that's what Trump was tying his wagon to just a week ago. That was shocking to a good number of people. It wasn't because people that are white hats inside Trump world have been trying to fix this. And they're the ones, by the way, it's people who are working close to Trump, who are the ones getting us on the outside to speak out about this, because because they have been unpersuasive despite their best efforts towards Trump. But there's no, but that's interesting. The idea of, could customers sue? I'll think about that. That might be an interesting angle.
Shareholder value, anticipated shareholder value loss, or predicted or feared. It's
something like, I mean, we're definitely looking at securities fraud against Pfizer and Moderna. There's that angle too. But yeah, it's figuring out an angle that gets around all the immunity. Credit to Chip Roy. He's introducing legislation in the House to end all immunity for the COVID vaccine. See, there's another example where that'd be easy for Trump. It's like, okay, the vaccine's great, fine. Let people sue and let the courts, let the judges and juries in the courts figure it out.
God forbid.
Yeah, exactly. But instead, he's still mad people don't give him credit. People don't. He has gone on rants with people in private about this, about how wonderful the vaccine is and how outrageous it is that people aren't giving him credit for it. If people had seen this behind the scenes, they'd want to smack him in the face 10 times.
Robert, I'm looking out my window and I'm seeing a lot of fireworks going off in the sky. And it's
Where are you?
I'm in Orlando area. What the hell is that?
Maybe Disney. Sometimes Disney does fireworks all the time.
Yeah, we're
St. Patty's Day. It's a St. Patty's Day thing.
We're a fair distance off. I'm just like, we didn't get a balcony.
I'll be getting some, because I live in a Mexican neighborhood, and you wouldn't think that connects to St. Patty's Day. If there's any excuse at all, they set off fireworks all the time. Doesn't matter.
Beavis Wallace says, Barnes promoting RFK. That's a joke. Viva and Barnes always criticize all politicians. They also discuss all their pros and cons. That is why they are so popular and why we trust their opinions. Along with Trump derangement syndrome, I fear Trump savior syndrome. What do both of you think of Trump's? I like the idea.
Yeah, I think both are a risk. And you don't help Trump. Trump has proven you don't help him by not sharing your opinions when you think he's doing a bad decision.
Look, we're honest. It's not honest for good and for bad. These fireworks.
It's not a coincidence that at the same time I'm talking about Tim Scott, Charlie Kirk is talking about issues connected to the vaccine and Trump or other issues. Jack Posobiec is putting out a bunch of stuff about Tim Scott. This is not talking out of school. This may come from people very close to the president.
Spam Ranger, $5. Why is nobody in Trump world talking about the former president's act provides an office in USA at location of former president's choosing, Mar-a-Lago, for activities that include work on presidential records? For Robert?
Yeah. That is part of his, to my knowledge, that's part of his legal defense, is that he was entitled to have the records where he had them in a secure facility at Mar-a-Lago under the various aspects of the laws.
Is Trump like Jimmy Hoffa, Al Pacino, in The Irishman, too arrogant to see the danger he's actually in? That was a $3, but I read it anyhow. When did Trump announce his VP pick? I must have missed it. He didn't announce it. That's from Joe Sapp.
It says right now Tim Scott is his leading candidate for
rumorings. Yeah. Maybe there's a member on board who's a member at Mar-a-Lago and could say something to. Don't worry, dude. This is Geronimo Rising.
If you're ever around him, just say, not Scott, not Mike Pence Part 2, not Scott.
Unless Trump shows up, I am voting RFK and is my husband, says Jeanette Victoria. How does one convince Trump to surround himself with people who will tell him what he needs to know rather than what he wants to hear? Right now, Trump has yes men and sycophants.
He wants people that criticize him, but he blows up at them when they do. Mm-hmm. So you just have to know how to navigate that. And it's not easy to navigate. It's a simple answer.
What about the issue of muting in regards to social media Supreme Court decision? Mute, they still get to talk. I don't think.
Mute would probably be fine. Block.
Yeah, they still get to post.
Yeah.
Missouri AG Andrew Bailey got rid of Soros-supported incumbent St. Louis DA Kim Gardner after putting out a damning paper called the Kim Gardner Report. What is stopping Georgia AG Chris Carr from doing the similar thing with Fani Willis? Robert, you know that better than I do.
Nothing. He's part of the same corrupt political administration as Kemp and Ratburger.
Can't locate this stream on my apps. Only email link on my phone works, says Rick1085. I'll screen grab that and make sure. I just heard today that Trump used private intelligence instead of CIA because he didn't trust them. Many agents quit. The clearance was capped as they left. This helped shut down the public-private retire and go to private and capture government contracts. This can be used to cap other deep state, but this is also increased Trump's good old boy system. So I don't know if any of this is the right way. Comments.
Yeah, I mean, he recognizes it, but part of it, but he thinks it's all individual. He doesn't think that Judge Napolitano said this week that Trump talked to him on the phone and said, there were crazy things inside the Kennedy assassination report that led him to believe he couldn't disclose it. But he would tell him sometime when he wasn't on the phone and everyone else wasn't listening in. So Trump recognized the issue in that part. He doesn't fully recognize that the only solution is institutional change and institutional purging. And in some contexts, he just medical freedom and food freedom right now, he doesn't recognize the issue, frankly.
I don't often get distracted. I'm distracted by the fireworks. I'm sorry. I'm going to pee in my pants also while I say this. I still push for an amendment to require any bill in Congress be printed in full online for public review for 60 days before allowing Congress to vote on it. And any change of any kind would reset the online access. I love that. That's schnookums. Then we got $25 from Trump has also reverted on abortions. Now say the abortions up to 16th week should be considered for certain situations. Oh my God. Admiral Cat, I'll take the unpopular position in our community on that. That's the politically not profitable, but palatable solution. Most people say up to 16 weeks. After that, few people will tolerate it. Before that, most people will not tolerate a prohibition. I think that's the politically popular.
That's
position.
where most people come down. Yeah.
Robert. Okay. What do we have next? You do this while I'm going to go record this on the window and just show people what I'm looking at.
So we got the Scientology and we got the San Fran case, and Fox sued over a war reporter in Ukraine. Apparently, they hired a freelance reporter to cover the war in Ukraine, and failed to take very rudimentary steps to protect their safety and misled them about their safety. And now the family has brought suit against Fox. It'll be interesting to see. Fox, of course, at the earliest stages was propagandizing the Ukrainian war. The entire Murdoch media empire was. If I'd been the lawyers, I would have added that component in too, as a motivation to be dismissive of security and safety risks. But it appears that Fox's safety failures led to the death of a reporter. Scientology has a long-standing dispute with Leah Remini. She's brought I think it's how you pronounce it. I may be butchering it. She has brought suit against them. A court ruled this week on which parts of the claim go forward and which ones don't. They ultimately ruled that certain opinion is protected from defamation claims or other related claims like tortious interference, intentional infliction of emotional distress that are premised or predicated on verbal statements, and noted that there has to be an implied assertion of fact that you could prove to be false for a statement of opinion to be actionable. And that most of the statements like bigoted, statements like inciting violence, statements like hateful, those statements generally courts find are not subject to being subject to a defamation suit under the First Amendment because they're too vague, they're too opinion oriented. They don't imply a assertion of fact that's provably false. On the other hand, Scientology tried to argue that their surveillance, stalking, and harassing of her was also constitutionally protected as speech, as association, and as preparation for litigation. So I've never heard of that before. But luckily, the court rejected those defenses and said, no, those are not constitutionally protected activities. So a big part of Leah Remini's case against Scientology will go forward. The last case we have is the San Fran is such a shithole, I have to sue case. So in the Tenderloin district is where a lot of working class people reside still in San Francisco. There's San Francisco used to have a huge 30s, 40s, 50s, even the 60s, early 70s, big working class component. It's mostly been wiped out as San Francisco has gentrified. But one of the last vestiges of working class community in San Francisco has been the Tenderloin district, which has been notorious for a wide range of reasons. But the city of San Francisco decided, we really don't want the drug users, the trans prostitutes. We don't want them, mucking up the streets of the Marina district. You know, the ones where all the wine moms live, where all the exercisers at 6 a.m. that, you know, got their JD or MD or whatever fancy degree in the professional managerial credentialed class lives, that like their little cafes in the afternoon, like to pretend they're in Europe. That we don't want those kind of people there. So let's stick them all in the Tenderloin. And they basically created a no prosecution district to encourage all the drug dealers, all the drug users, all the prostitutes, all the Johns to gather in the Tenderloin, which has one of the last working class populations. And so what's happened is that part of San Francisco is a complete shithole, to quote President Trump talking about undesirable places to be. And people don't remember, Trump referred to Haiti as that. And a bunch of people talked about how great Haiti was. To see if Conan O'Brien is taking a trip to Haiti tomorrow. He might literally end going around and around. And
Well,
around.
Robert, the word on the street is that that's an old video that's being recirculated. So there was cannibalism in Haiti before Law and Order broke down. Surely there's none of it now.
Oh yes, it's just rare that their gang leader is named Barbecue, and he might be a future leader of Haiti. Is because of his cannibalism.
Robert,
That's taking it to a whole. That's taking Papa Doc to a whole new level.
It's rare. It's rare, like he takes his meat. But okay, Robert, hold on. Check this out. Check this out.
Brutal. But so they're suing. Oh yeah.
These are the fireworks out the way. Hold on, check this out. I think I got the grand finale. Well, it's much more impressive from the window. Wait, there you go. Look at this. Boom! Look at that.
Wow.
Oh gosh. Grand finale. Okay, that was the text, but there was nothing private there, and it's only our locals community. I'm seeing Adam Johnson tomorrow, lectern guy.
Yeah, that's cool. So a bunch of people, working class folks in the community, have sued, and they have some interesting theories. Like, so I knew they'd sue on nuisance grounds. They're suing on due process, equal protection, state created danger grounds. Those are very hard to prove, but they might be able to get over the hurdle there. But the interesting one is they're suing on ADA grounds because the Americans with Disabilities Act and its California analog actually consider sidewalks to be places that the cities and the governments must make accessible for the disabled. And they're pointing out where our streets are now occupied literally by trainee prostitutes and drug users who are physically living there. So we can't even walk up and down. And so consequently, you're violating the ADA. So that was an interesting and novel.
That's interesting.
Claim. So we might finally see some relief and remedy from some of the horrendous public policies of the city of San Francisco.
I just like the fact that you're swearing on Twitter too now. Now I feel better about myself for having called someone.
Well, I'm just quoting Trump. You know, I know I avoided, but I was like, that's a Trump quote, so that's appropriate.
We got Chop Saki, $5 says, you skipped my rubber. I didn't skip it, I missed it, but I don't mind supporting you twice. The scene you were asking about in the Michelle Obama montage is from Tom Hanks' The Bachelor Party. Well, I might want to watch that movie now. Barnes, what is your take on Biden's Department of Labor rule that will affect millions of independent contractors? Do you know?
Yeah, that's the other thing he's trying to do. He's trying to wipe out independent contractors by forcing them to become W-2 wage slaves. And that's going to be subject to its own. That's piggybacking off of what California did to truckers and some other people some years ago that caused a disaster there. It will have its own economic ramifications, but I think it will face litigation first. And as soon as it gets to the litigation stage, then we'll cover it more fully.
Okay. Do you like what Lara Trump is doing that's from Sleeves?
Some of it, yes. I was annoyed when they hired a Jeb Bush acolyte to be one of their lead lawyers. I was like, oh man. So I am talking to some people tomorrow that have a lot of political juice and that are really skilled in the electoral world, election lawsuit world. And so I'm hopeful that she's made a lot of great decisions. It's just that's got to be a component. And the other one is data. If Laura Lee Trump fully understands what she needs, I think she's the real deal as a person and intentions, motivations. But if that's gonna translate into the kind of institutional changes that are needed at the RNC, then you'll see it in what legal counsel get retained, but you'll also see it in what data people get retained. Put Richard Barris on the approved vendor list add Richard Barris to the RNC team. Then I'll know they're serious. Until then, I'm going to worry that we're going to get a Trumpish leadership. Very good rhetorically, very well intended, translation problems when it comes to personnel and policy.
Many of us feel we are in dire straits. Everything about our country, our living, many of us feel we would get more accomplished with RFK Jr., and many of us turn our vote to him. Perhaps RFK Jr. would win and we'd be better off. And soon he can't win. He can't win.
Yeah, I think it's a long shot. A lot of people get obsessed with that comparison. So my view is RFK is voting for RFK is maybe the most effective means of reaching Trump. That Trump right now is every other attempt has already been made. So the only thing I think at this stage that can persuade Trump to pay attention to these issues is if he thinks he might lose enough votes to Robert Kennedy that could cost him Trump the election. And some people confuse that with me saying vote for Kennedy, not Trump. That's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if Trump believes a bunch of people will vote for Kennedy rather than, the problem is some people in Trump world got the message I put out early, which is objectively and analytically correct, that Kennedy wouldn't be a threat because come election day, people only vote for who they think can win. And thus Trump doesn't have to worry about it. I wish now I would have kept my mouth shut about that because Trump now thinks that. So he thinks he doesn't have to worry about Kennedy no matter what the polls show. And now we need him afraid of Kennedy's taking some vote, not because Kennedy's going to win, but because he could cost Trump the victory, which could only happen if now there is a chance that actually happens. If Trump keeps going on the vaccine stuff, and then the problem with Tim Scott is he puts him in, he either defers the deep state or he's dead within a year. Just blunt. That's bluntly what's going to happen. On the other hand, if in terms of the election impact, if he ever goes back and doubles down on those vaccines in certain ways, then he could lose enough votes to Kennedy to cost him the election. People don't understand the agitation level out there. They don't understand how big that community is.
Understand this. I'm pissed, and I'm not injured. I took 2, and that's it. But I'm not even of the demographic that's injured or whatever.
But someone who has been. That's half of that's at least half of
a dozen people.
That people either lost their jobs, and I know Trump never pushed mandates and opposed mandates. It doesn't matter to those people. It started with the vaccine. It started with approval of the vaccine. It started with vouching for and validating the vaccine. That's why you have to understand the mindset of those people and lecturing them about how wrong they are if they vote for Kennedy rather than Trump is going to get you nowhere. That get Trump on board. That's the simpler, cleaner, easier, better path to getting Trump's success. Not complaining about, and like right now, Trump world is clueless about who they may lose to Kennedy. They think the votes they lose to Kennedy are people that are concerned about gun control, are concerned about environmentalism. Folks, none of those people are voting for Kennedy. The people who are voting for Kennedy are people who voted for Obama in 2012. That's who he made, but then voted for Trump in 2016. Voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016 and then voted for Trump. Do you think those voters care about abortion, the environment, or gun control? No. Those are working class, independent, populist voters who are not overly concerned with any of those 3 issues. That's who he's losing. And instead, I get the dumbest points. Wayne Allen Root was making, Trump may nominate this person for VP, or Kennedy may nominate this person for VP. We don't have to worry about Kennedy anymore now because that's a liberal. That's not who's voting for Kennedy. That's not the risk of who Trump may lose in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia that could cost them the presidential election. It's younger voters. It's working class independent voters. It's voters who liked Barack Obama and Bernie Sanders voters, but who don't like Joe Biden. That's who Trump can win as long as he doesn't campaign like an idiot. But right now, there's part of what he's doing is campaigning like an idiot.
Will Puss McAfee grant immediate consideration or make them wait for appeal in Fani case? Does he want to toss the hot potato to the appeals court ASAP? I say yes. Why would he reconsider his own decision?
We can always try, but maybe he didn't expect the political blowback. That'd be the only reason.
I'm a member of Amos Miller OrganicFarm.com and checking his site. Everything is out of stock. Please help, says Rue Sport.
Yeah.
Reardon
a lot of it is,
says
yes.
Viva. Read your stream on Rogan guest with the head. Yeah, Johnson. Do a little homework on the Innocence Project. Big time restorative justice wokies. Watch Actual Justice Warrior on this. I will, but look, I'm skeptical of the guy Josh Dubin. I'm skeptical, but I listened to two full episodes.
I've worked with the Innocence Project. I mean, a lot of people that are their personality types are wokies, but a lot of their work is fantastic. And Actual Justice Warrior is utterly unreliable. I mean, his take on a range of issues, including the whole Steven Crowder thing, I quit following him and listening to anything he said, being blunt about it.
Okay.
Well, once somebody says something idiotic about something I know a lot about, I'm not going to trust them on things I don't know a lot about. That's even dumber.
What is Ben Carson's view on the vaccine? Says Thomas the Cat.
He's been notoriously quiet, to his credit. There's a guy that has a political. There's an actual doctor. Here's what you can infer. If Ben Carson, I mean Tim Scott, by the way, cheered the lockdowns, cheered the mandates, cheered the vaccine over and over and over again. By the way, it's part of the reason Trump is considering it. The last part. That's a right now. But and people like some people say, well, why did you say Trump is acting like a pussy? To get his attention and to get Trump's world attention. Unfortunately, you have to elevate the rhetoric, or he just does something really dumb. That's just the reality. It's an unfortunate reality, but it is what it is. As Bob Jones famously said, sometimes you got to cuss the folks that need cussing in order to get attention. It's not desirable, but it's necessary. But Ben Carson, unlike a lot of those other people, unlike DeSantis, frankly, at the beginning, always stayed pretty quiet, which you can infer in the past he has expressed skepticism about aspects of the vaccine. Like a lot of people are trying to guess Robert Kennedy's vice presidential candidate, and there's speculation now that it would be this the ex-wife of one of the Google founders, and she was like fascinating life history. Grew up. I mean, her father was a severe schizophrenic, so he had severe mental illness that was like a torturous childhood. Mother was a Chinese immigrant. The right will focus on things that the MAGA vote cares about, but not the vote that's thinking about voting for Kennedy thinks about. They'll focus that she's an environmentalist, connected to the tech industry, worked in China, mom was a Chinese immigrant, kind of your conventional, and probably up until 4 or 5 years ago was a conventional Silicon Valley lefty. Even though she has a very unusual history, started working when she was like 11 years old. I mean, she's not your professional class profile. But she is very well off, so she could help actually self-finance the campaign. And maybe they'll get Trump. All I'm focused on is getting Trump's attention so he fixes his issues. That's it.
Robert,
people can speculate all the super secret motives that they think it's out there. That those other motives aren't there. But you know what everyone's gonna miss, like Wayne Allen Root missed and other people missed. Why does she like Robert Kennedy if she's a traditional liberal? Here's a key fact to know. Why she was the one who paid for the Super Bowl ad. Her daughter's on the spectrum, and she has been obsessed with focusing on what may have caused it and what causes autism in general. And she's kind of quietly been heavily researching the topic. You can take a wild guess where that leads. It's going to lead to the vaccine. Very articulate and sharp and smart. So I'm all for it. If Kennedy puts her on the ticket, I'm all for it because it'll elevate that issue. His chances to win are 100 to 1, 200 to 1. I mean, that's just not realistic. The key is how much can he impact the court of public opinion on issues that all of us care about, and how much can he help Trump take the best direction on a bunch of issues. That's the impact of Kennedy's campaign.
Robert, who said sometimes you got to cuss the guys that need cussing?
Bob Jones, founder of the Fundamentalist University in Greenville, South Carolina.
Tweeted it. Damn, I love that. That's my excuse right now. When I tell someone to go fuck themselves, sometimes you got to cuss the people that need cussing. Robert, hold on. There's more here. Think about how to get Amos Miller milk into Canada. Maybe I can get an illegal alien to carry it across the border. Just kidding. Any other ideas? Says Willie's mom. Tony DeMarco says, is the Barnes Way a hit song yet? I made it for Barnes. Well, hold on. I'm gonna open that up afterwards. That's from Tony DeMarco.
For the Sunday party, we might have there's a piano there. We might have a Viva Barnes Law version of Viva Las Vegas.
I'll start practicing. Robert, it's 3 hours on the nose now, give or take. Have we missed anything? We got
Nope,
everything.
We got it all.
Robert, I want everyone to understand the praise of RFK. You criticize
And
people
I like
you love.
RFK. He's one of the greatest human beings I've ever known. I've been publicly said I'm never going to speak badly about him because he's an extraordinary human being. But anybody speculating that it's for Robert Kennedy to beat Trump, that's an extreme long shot. The people should be looking at Kennedy as how can a Kennedy campaign impact the court of public opinion on issues we all care about, and how can a Kennedy campaign impact Trump to make the best decisions. That's going to be the impact of the Kennedy campaign. It's not going to be winning the presidency. It's going to be one of those two things. Now he is a bit of he is life insurance still for Trump, because they won't take out Trump during election time because then Kennedy could be elected president, and they're more scared of Kennedy than they are of Trump. But so there is that third benefit that a Kennedy campaign presents, but it's not. I think he'll do a lot better than the polls are currently, than a lot of people think. People are saying 3%, 5%. I think he'll do a lot better than that. But I don't think he will impact the actual election unless Trump screws up. And the best way to prevent that isn't to lecture people who back Kennedy. It isn't to lecture Kennedy. It's to lecture Trump.
I'm going to read 3 more tips, then we're going to end it. Ursula G. Barnes needs to do some research. You sound uneducated and I love what you like. You know what you're talking about. Please watch the documentary called Another Vision to know what's really going on. Please, Ursula G. I'm gonna.
I don't know what that's about.
Then we got $5 from JAsh62. Glenn Beck is supposedly bringing suit on this. Did you know the Corporate Transparency Act could make small business owners criminals? Former investment banker and You Will Own Nothing author Carol Roth joins Glenn Beck program to explain how the federal government is completely out of control. We do that. She says she'll join Glenn in a lawsuit to end the unconstitutional act.
Yeah.
And then one more.
The small business lawsuit already won. So that's the suit that's going to decide the future of that case.
DTQC, I've looked at what Rumble Cloud has to offer, and it seems like a decent no-vendor lock-in cloud offering. We'll certainly try it out for personal projects of mine. Also, when you go back to Quebec, you will have to shower with an hourglass for the sake of energy sobriety. They're trying to whip Quebecers into submission. RFK is Ross Bro 92, wasted vote. Done. What we are doing now, we're ending. Everybody, thank you for being here. Sorry about the lighting. It'll be like this for the rest of the week. Next week's Sunday show, I'll be back in my office studio. Monday, something is happening Monday. I'm hosting a debate between Roger Stone and another person and Occupy Democrats, or what's it called? Occupy Democrats?
Oh yeah. They formed themselves after Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. It's in-person debate. So Monday, I'm going to be at West Palm Beach or something. Stay tuned for that. Next week's going to be amazing. All right, ending it. Thank you all for being here, people. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. There's 2 hours and somewhat left. 2 hours and 59 minutes left. See you soon, people. Enjoy the day.